Okay.
Today, I want to tell you a story about my very first credit card. Freshly 18, in my second year of university, I was walking through the student center where I saw a booth advertising a free university t-shirt. I was very intrigued. I was 18, I didn't know what I was looking for in a credit card, I didn't know what kind of rewards I wanted, but I knew I wanted one. So I walked up to the booth, I asked them questions, they eased my concerns, and I knew that I really wanted that t-shirt. So that day, I signed up for that credit card. This is a great example of how being at the right place at the right time and properly incentivizing students can be a really great way to reach that market. So hi, my name is Stephanie, and I'm here today with Angela and Catherine, and we're going to present a strategy for Scotiabank so they can bank on their future with a new student credit card. So before we get started, let's talk about some of the market that Scotiabank is currently competing in. So first of all, it's an extremely concentrated and competitive market. So 80% of all outstanding balances is held by the top 6 competitors. So it's a really competitive market to be competing in. Scotiabank is currently 5th in terms of outstanding balances with a 12.5% market share, and they're looking to grow that with a new student credit card. Secondly, this is a very undifferentiated product with low switching costs. So like I said, I didn't really know a lot about credit cards, and I didn't really care that much which one I signed up for because I knew that they were all basically the same thing. So it's kind of hard to capture students in that sense, and you have to have the right rewards in order to incentivize them. And finally, the target has negative feelings towards credit, as most of them believe that it increases debt and is sometimes viewed as a bad thing. So overall, Scotiabank needs an effective strategy to target and retain these students to launch this successful new credit card. So some of the main asks that you pointed out in this case, we saw could be analyzed in these 3 different ways. So first of all, we have what kind of credit card should be offered. So we'll be addressing this in the first part. So we propose a partnership with Ticketmaster in order to have rewards that are experience-based, which is very highly valued by this student market. Next, also we have how to be the #1 cards that students use. So you don't just want to be one of the credit cards in a student's wallet, but you want to be the first credit card that a student will pull out when they're purchasing their groceries or their clothing or whatever that may be. And as well, how can we get the students to, And then the next part is how can we get students to sign up for these credit cards? So this is a really important piece. We need to make sure that we're there for the students so that they come to us instead of one of the other major competitors. So we'll be offering VR booths on campus in order to replicate the experience of a Ticketmaster concert so that they can then be incentivized to get the credit card and they will be able to go to the concerts once they earn their rewards. And then finally, how can we manage students when they sign on? How can we get students to activate and actually use the credit card so that they don't just get it sent to their house and then never actually use it again? And finally, how to move on to non-student credit cards upon graduation. So we obviously want students using these credit cards, but then when they graduate, we don't want them to move on to a different bank. We want them to graduate to one of our adult credit cards with the yearly fees. So first, we're going to talk about the new credit card proposal with Ticketmaster and how this card will result in a 30% savings for the students through their rewards.
So what we know right now about the student market is that there are people who really value a point system and using those points in order to purchase merchandise. So as we look through the data, we realize that students are really interested in those maybe gimmicks that will help sign them up, just like Stephanie's story, and they really do want those experiences that help showcase their personality. On top of that, they're looking for support with building their credit scores, as well as they have a lot of worries behind credit card debt. And we've seen that through 26% really want that points purchase, almost 77% worry about the credit card debt. So those are things that we're going to look to mitigate moving forward. So this is what we're proposing currently. We're going to have a partnership with Ticketmaster to create a new credit card for them with an annual fee of $0, which is standard, as well as a lower balance transfer fee of 19%. So we've chosen to do this lower balance transfer fee of 19% because we want to ease those worries of having outstanding credit card debt. We want to begin to educate those consumers on how to build their credit in that sense. On top of that, we're going to be providing exclusive access to ticket sales. So we're going to give our consumers, our credit card holders, access in advance to purchase those tickets for concerts or whatever they might have on Ticketmaster, as well as have exclusive concerts and events for those ticket holders alone. And then finally, we're going to have that point system. We're going to offer 4 points for every dollar spent, as well as $1 off tickets for every, I believe, 420 points. So that's how the point system is going to work, and that's how we're going to reward our consumers. So on top of that, we know that how we've structured our credit card to be is going to be very valuable to consumers that we have on hand, because they see the value in points as a way to receive rewards. They like the low balance fee because that will ease their mind with the credit card debt issue, as well as through all the experiences that we're providing with a partner such as Ticketmaster. They'll be able to go to these concerts and different events that showcase their personality and who they are through us. So we'll see a tangible benefit of around $30 for a $100 ticket, which will happen in a year's timeline, and that will be able to happen in a very reasonable length. We know that a lot of the issues that happen with these reward systems and credit cards is that people won't be able to see the actual tangible factor of the reward system while they're on that credit card, so they don't see any value to their credit card. We're trying to do it in a way that's very transparent and really easy with that $30 off and $100 concert ticket or event ticket every year.
All right, so through this section, we answered 2 very key questions that you had. First of all, what kind of credit card should be offered? That being the partnership with Ticketmaster to offer experiences to the students, and also have be the #1 card that students will use since they value those experiences. So we'll have the point system with Ticketmaster, as well as a low balance fee and exclusive ticket access to events. So this will have an outcome of tangible rewards of 30% off on the tickets, as well as it'll reduce concerns with credit card debt. And finally, it aligns with the importance placed on experiences that is present in the target market that we're going after. So now we're going to talk about how we can actually communicate this new credit card to students and how we're going to get them to sign up. So specifically, we'll be going through using sentiment analysis to target students when they're dissatisfied with another company and get them to switch over to Scotiabank. As well as using TrueView and bumpers to acquire students on YouTube, and finally using AR on campuses to replicate the student experience that they're going for.
So like Angela said, we now have this really great credit card because we know people are going to value, because we know that the Gen Z generation really values these different experiences. But the question is, how do we let them know that these experiences are there to be had and can be attained on our credit card? Now, you asked us specifically, what kind of channels do these consumers and these students go to today? But we don't feel like that's the only question that we need to answer. We feel like it's important to identify when exactly we present ourselves to these customers and where we present ourselves. So what we want to do and what we recommend that you do is get sentiment analysis and utilize sentiment analysis, which is essentially scraping different forms of social media for information about not only your product, but just about industries and trends in general. And what this will allow you to do is target customers who are, 1, feeling dissatisfied with their current bank, and that's a way for us to take share from the competition. But we also want to target students who are talking about big milestones in their life. These are usually what marketers refer to as points of market entry or points of market change. So for example, a point of market entry for a student might be a student who's just graduated high school and is now going into university, and now it's a perfect time for them to get their first credit card. So anybody tweeting about that or on social media about that is someone that we would be targeting and reaching out to using sentiment analysis. Now, another example of a point of market change is when someone who maybe gets a co-op job, their first co-op job, and now has money in the bank and feels like they can take on the extra responsibility of having this credit card. So in order for you to implement this sentiment analysis, we recommend that you use Sysomos. Sysomos is the market leader in data analysis. They've been used by brands such as Google, Boeing, and other huge brands. And it costs about $1,000 a seat. So for every license, it'll be a $1,000 cost to you, but it'll allow you to really understand and be a part of a greater conversation that's occurring online with your target customer. Now, the next thing that we recommend that you do is utilize YouTube. We know that these consumers and these students are actively on YouTube watching these videos, and we recommend that you do it in 2 different ways. It's going to be in conjunction of using YouTube TrueView, which are 30-second previews of videos in which the consumer actually chooses that they want to watch. So it's not like I'm going on YouTube and looking for something and then it's prompting me with an ad which I can skip. I'm actually going out of my way and saying, this looks interesting, I want to watch this advertisement. And by doing that and allowing the consumer that decision, it makes the relationship between the brand and the person a lot more authentic. But not only do we want to utilize these 30-second advertisements, we want them to be followed by a 6-second YouTube bumper. The reason that we want that is because research has been done by Google and YouTube that say that when you add bumpers to the end of these TrueView videos, they are much more effective than if you just use a 30-second bumper alone. So now you might be wondering, now that I know what you want me to advertise on YouTube, you're probably wondering, what exactly am I going to put in this 30 seconds? That's a relatively long amount of time for a consumer and a student to be watching. Now what we want them to do is on this TrueView, on 30-second ad, want to make sure we're appealing to their emotions. We know that consumers' main motivation of getting a credit card is because they know that they need to gain credit, they need to build up their credit. So we want to do in this 30-second clip is show a montage of moments from childhood all the way to buying your first home. So that'll start with going to school, getting your first credit card, going on your first date and tapping that credit card to pay for dinner. All of these special moments in someone's life is what we want this 30-second ad to be comprised of. And the reason we wanted to have that emotional aspect to it is because we know that research that has been done by Nielsen, that emotional advertisers are 2 times as effective as rational ones. So we feel like that'll be extra effective. But the question is that 6-second bumper that comes right after that 30 seconds, what exactly is that going to say? What we wanted to do is prompt you with a call to action. Something to take the consumer to go check out our Scotiabank website and look at the credit cards that we have available. And we want that so to be super simple. We want it to play to that aspect of we know that people want to build credit. So the tagline we're going to use is helping you build credit so that you can build your life. Now, the last thing I would recommend that you do is utilize virtual reality in places where these students will be, so on campus and in branches, so that we can make the consumer understand and the student understand what exactly there is to benefit and to gain from using this Ticketmaster credit card. So often people can't conceptualize what exactly the benefits are. These conversion rates confuse them and they feel like these goals are never actually attainable. So what we want to do is we want to set up shop in campus centers as well as branches to show them exactly what experiences they could be having on Ticketmaster by using our credit card and by getting those points to contribute to that. Now we know that by using virtual reality, there's usually 35% higher engagement, longer engagement, and it results in higher sales. So we feel like this would be a really positive advertising strategy for them to use.
So this answers a very, very important question for Scotiabank, being how are we actually going to reach these students? So we can make a great credit card, but if you're not able to get people to sign up for it, it won't be successful. So specifically using the strategies of YouTube advertisements, virtual reality, and sentiment analysis, you'll be able to reach these students and get them to sign up for the card. So the outcomes that we can expect from this are increased engagement from the students, as well as stimulating sales, and finally acquiring new customers from our competitors in order to grow that market share that we're looking to grow. So now we're going to talk about how we can continue to retain customers and encourage you. So now we have our credit card, we've gotten people to sign up for it, but we need them to use it, and eventually we want them to use our other credit cards as well. So through this section, we'll be talking about gamifying the onboarding process, as well as focusing on customer service through using a Net Promoter Score, and finally retaining customers at a point of market change.
So we want to gamify the onboarding process because we know that this will increase user engagement and we'll get them through the funnel in order to make this credit card usage more of a habit. We want to make our credit card top of mind when they're pulling credit cards out of their wallet. So Deloitte has used gamification in the past for their online learning academy, and this actually resulted in a 46.6% increase in the number of returned users. So we see this to be very powerful, and we want to use the power of gamification onto our credit card as well. So a process of what it could look like is one of the badges you could earn on that gamification process were to activate the card. You get another badge if you use the card for your first purchase, and then you get another badge if you were to be able to buy 5 items during the week using your credit card. That way, we're increasing engagement throughout the week, and it eventually will build good habits in terms of customers using our card. So we think that this will be very effective. On top of this, we want to implement our Net Promoter Score when dealing with customer service and customer satisfaction. Since Stephanie mentioned this is an undifferentiated market, there's not much that will differentiate a credit card from one to another. We want to make sure that our customer service is what makes us stand apart. So what the Net Promoter Score is, it's a very simple question asked from a scale of 0 to 10. How likely would you be to recommend this to a friend? So it's a very easy question that kind of measures customer satisfaction as well as brand loyalty. And this is something we want to employ to make sure that our customer service tactics have been very effective. So on the scale of 0 to 10, we know that promoters will be those who score a 9 to 10 on the scale. Those who are passive will be at 6 to 7, and those who are detractors are from the 0 to 6. So if we look at the scores, those who are promoters will actually stay 4 to 16 times longer than a detractor, which means much more of an increase in their lifetime value. As well as those promoters are more likely to spend 3 times as more because they're loyal customers. So we want to make sure that when we're implementing our customer service tactics, we're also including the Net Promoter Score so that we have a metric to evaluate that. And then finally, as we've mentioned, the points of market change are a really effective way of getting our consumers on board and even taking them away from our competitors. So 2 things we want to do is a big point of market change would be when our consumers graduate from university onto the real world. So graduation is what we want to focus on. One of those things that we can do is graduation gift, and the second one being sponsoring graduation parties across the country. So with their graduation gifts, we were thinking of sending letters saying congratulations, you made it, something like that, include a pouch of confetti, and then also include you are pre-approved for this card that is a step up of what their student card would normally be. We've seen that when there's a pre-approved message on top of the mail, consumers tend to be 9% more receptive to what we're offering. So you want to make sure that we put that on, and we're building an authentic relationship by congratulating them when they're actually graduating. Next, we want to also sponsor their graduation parties because, again, this builds goodwill, and it also shows that we're an authentic brand that really cares about the consumer as a whole. So we are going to be sponsoring 10 parties across the country, and this will be really effective in building that customer relationship again and getting them to transfer from our student cards onto some more advanced cards.
All right, so for this section, we finally addressed all of the asks that needed to be addressed in this case. So specifically, how can we manage students when they sign on? How can we get them to actually use the cards and activate them? And finally, how can we get them to switch off once they've graduated from a student card? So specifically what we discussed was gamifying the onboarding process in order to get them to activate and use the card and be an active user, as well as implementing Net Promoter Score in order to improve our customer service and really have that as an advantage for the company as opposed to other banks. And finally, the grad gifts and parties to target those people when they're graduating university and build a bit of goodwill through having the grad party contest. So the key outcomes from this is increased engagement throughout the process, as well as a quantifiable customer service metric in order to be able to improve on that sense. And finally, reaching customers at points of change in order to get them to switch into our cards instead of switching to a different bank. So now we're going to be discussing implementation, risks, and outcomes with this solution that we presented. So first of all, for implementation, these are some of the key pieces that must be done, and it should be implemented within 1.5 years. So the first thing that has to happen is the negotiations with Ticketmaster in order to finalize the details of the card in terms of transaction fees and percentage of rewards earned. Which will take about 6 months, and then also 4 months for research into concerts and development of the virtual reality that we plan to bring to campuses. So we want to make sure that we're finding experiences that are what students want to be doing, so that's why the research has to be done in order to find relevant artists and concerts. As well as 1 month to implement the Ask Nicely for Net Promoter Scores. This is the company that we'll be working with to implement the Net Promoter Score. And finally, 2 months for the grad gifts and the contest start. So finally, for risks, there are 2 main risks that we identified. So the first one is if Ticketmaster is not good enough, or if students aren't interested in the Ticketmaster partnership, if there isn't a large enough base in order to target. However, we don't think this is a very large risk because you do currently already offer 2 credit cards, one being with Cineplex and one being a cashback-based credit card. So this will be an entirely different experiences that students can choose to sign up for, as well as it doesn't cannibalize on the other student cards that currently exist, as it's a fully different experience. So hopefully we'll be able to target a fully different group of students than what we're currently targeting. And secondly, if the grad letter is unsuccessful with sign up, so if this isn't a good enough incentive for students to sign up for it, we can simplify the process and make it even easier for them to make that switch. And finally, we can offer a free account for a year so that they only have to start paying a year later.
Now, in terms of the outcome that we expect from the given recommendation, we expect to attract around 320,000 of the total student population in Canada. That's about 15% of the share of the market in terms of customer base. We expect to see $300 of profit for the customers, and the cost for you to have this partnership with Ticketmaster would be, like we said before, $30 a year to cover those points based on what we approximate that students will be spending. $50 per year based on what they should be spending.
So with this recommendation, we believe that Scotiabank will be able to bank on its future and have a successful credit card for students. We're now open to any questions.
Good work, guys. I was excited to see this. So, yeah, I'll start with this, okay? So American Express has this already exclusively with Ticketmaster. How do you guys plan on what's gonna happen there?
That's a great point. That actually got brought up during resolution, so I'm glad you're here. So we are aware fully of the partnership, and we're not trying to step on anyone's toes. So we have to fully look into what that partnership entails and how exactly we would do it differently. In terms of differentiating ourselves, we'd also do the exclusive ticket sales in advance. But I guess depending on how they've already had it set up, we can do like a second tier with our credit card. It's a lot more accessible, and we know that Scotiabank is more utilized across the country than Amex. Amex can be accepted at a lot of places as well. I don't know if they have a student version on top of that. So we know that we'd be able to capture a different portion of the market and still provide them with the benefits that they'd be looking forward to.
Ticketmaster is more of a ticket distributor, right? They don't own the rights of access like you would like an MLSE, Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, or Live Nation if it's on a concert. Those are the guys that have the sponsorship negotiation deals for access and which tier goes where. So that's how Ticketmaster negotiated deals with those guys. Scotia is really not part of the value chain there at all. So how do you guys plan to actually get the access to the students as an incentive, especially with American Express who has the banking tier one?
So with the exclusive access, we weren't meaning that like every single concert they would have exclusive access. So it's going to be more so like key concerts that we would advertise to the people that hold the credit cards. They would have the opportunity for some concerts. So it would be more on like an individual basis. So we would be doing those negotiations with the respective parties as that comes up, and kind of getting a team working on that so that we can offer those.
Sorry, so just so clear, is the benefit, I actually don't know this, I'm not trying to be a jerk. Is the benefit that the students will get access to these events, or they get discounted tickets?
So,
Is it a bit of both, or is it, sorry?
yeah, so there'll be definitely two benefits, and it's kind of a two-pronged thing. So by spending money on the credit card, they
Yes.
can accumulate points of which they can apply to when they want to buy a ticket to a concert, and that would allow them a $1 discount on that total ticket fee. Now, the other benefit that there is, and this will be seasonal and depending on what kind of concerts are in town, they'll also be able to get special access, early access to these concerts, just as an American Express user would also get. But the difference would be there to make sure that we don't step on any toes, like Angela said, in those relationships, is to have a second tier. So Amex customers will still get that first go at the tickets that are available, but Scotiabank would have a second tier. And like she said as well, is that there'll be different customer bases, the Amex user versus the Scotiabank one. So we're really not cannibalizing anybody else's sales in that sense. And hopefully remaining neutral parties involved.
Can I ask a question? So, let's imagine for a second that all the partnership constraints with Ticketmaster didn't exist for a second. Can we just talk about the relative value or strategic value of choosing Ticketmaster as your partner? So, you're basically you're focusing on your customer that either value sports, so that's a targeted male, young demographic, millennial, or concerts, which is a targeted female, young demographic primarily. Versus most points programs that cover travel, hotels, and food, which are far widely more applicable and cover all demographics. So tell me why you're constraining yourselves.
So we're talking about experiences because we know that that's what this target customer appreciates and values. We took a look at the value of a mile versus a point system that focused on niche experiences such as concerts, such as sports. We looked at the idea of that that essentially a vacation would cost, let's say, $1,000. And in the consumer's mind, how much time it would take to actually save up to make some sort of actual significant impact on the overall dollar figure of savings would actually take a long, long time. And that usually discourages people from signing up for these card programs in the first place.
Can I push back on that? Why does it have to take a long time? You could have a better incentive program or provide more points. I really thought that was gonna drive customer adoption. So why does it have to take long to go that?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to take a long time because of the point system conversion, but the fact is that students don't have a lot of money and they're not spending a lot of dollars in the first place. So yeah, you can make the conversion better, but it would still require a lot of dollars in order for it to be fair to the current partnerships that are going on between airline companies and our current banks. So we have to stay respectful to the conversion rates that offer other banks and other branches. But the idea essentially is that.
Okay, so I have two questions. It's a little not fair because in the case for Scotia with this stuff. First one I'm gonna ask is just, you mentioned the scene, right? So there's a reason why scene is seen and it's Scotiabank is seen and it's been like that for a while. How do you think they're gonna react to this idea and do you think they're gonna allow it?
That is something that we kind of discussed a little bit. I would say that I see where you're coming from. That scene is movies and we're talking about like concerts or events. So it is very similar in that sense, but they are also very different if you think about the fact that if you're thinking about going to see a concert, you're probably not also thinking about going to see a movie that day. Like they're very different experiences. One's a lot more like energetic and high strung, whereas one's more of a relaxing experience. So while they are both experience-based rewards, they have a very different target market in that sense.
And that's why I'm asking this question, because if they are very different, there are gonna be people that prefer Ticketmaster and don't get the scene card, so the scene can be upset. Probably. Okay, I'll give you a different question. I'll take this completely different way. So I like the sentiment analysis. I think it's a really good way, especially for millennials. You get a lot of good data. We found that with millennials, they actually don't really tweet about the bank a lot. So I'm just wondering, are there some sort of adjacent channels or sentiments we could creatively look at to try and get the same sort of insights?
So we're talking about.
No, do it.
Keep going, trust me.
Don't turn red.
It's already happening. So we're talking about sentiment analysis. There are really 2 points that we're looking at in terms of the kind of sentiment we're looking for from consumers. One of them was definitely the dissatisfaction either with the current bank, but in general dissatisfaction with maybe how much money they do have or things like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, I'm so upset at CIBC and this is happening with this bank and all those things, because we do understand that as a very personal thing. And we actually said that in Resident. I said, I would never personally like tweet about my bank account like that, right? So we understand those things, but it's more so looking for adjacent things. We can still get that same sentiment, but maybe not so much targeting. The keywords wouldn't be, your competitors' names like CIBC or things like that, because we don't see that as being a realistic thing that people would be tweeting in this age range. So we can find parallel sentiment by looking for other keywords, which would associate with the same sort of connotation, negative connotation. And then additionally, where we feel like even more value is in sentiment analysis is with that point of market entry and point of market change. So people who are tweeting about, I just graduated, I just got accepted to co-op, I do all of these things, I just got from university. We feel like that is definitely something that people do tweet about and do post about on all forms of social media. And so we see the real value point of sentiment analysis being there, and the secondary one just being that dissatisfied.
Perfect. So rather than sentiment, we're going to use the target for our consumers. Is that what I'm hearing?
Pardon?
We're going to use those tweets to like target those people.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to take a look at the sentiment that comes along with those tweets and make sure that we're targeting those types of consumers because they're likely more receptive to what we have to offer.
Okay.
Is that it? No
Yeah,
questions?
we're done.
Oh,
Unless we can have one more question if you want.
I'm just curious, this one's not you told us about the promoting on YouTube, using that as a means to connect with the audience, but then you use the YouTube stat to back up YouTube. So it's like, if YouTube and Google will tell you that YouTube's amazing. So do you have any third-party stats to sort of validate that piece? I would never tell anyone that Scotia is terrible. I'm gonna tell you Scotia has the best this, but it's not as powerful, so.
I piggyback on that, why not Instagram, Snapchat, and all these other channels that people are on, why specifically YouTube?
Yeah.
So we take a look at the different means in which we can advertise. We take a look at Instagram. One common tactic that we use is influencers, just because we know that people around that age range really care about what their peers think. And we took a look at that option in terms of targeting through the use of influencers. We felt that people wouldn't really be posting about their credit cards or personal things as such, or calling out, I used this credit card to buy this product. So I didn't feel like that was really the best way to go about it. Instead, we felt that YouTube and the use of video really appeals to the emotions, which we know are more effective than rational advertisements. We do know that people go on YouTube a lot. I can't name off the style off the top of my head at this current moment, unfortunately. But we do know that that is a characteristic of this demographic that we're taking a look at. And so that's how we chose to target YouTube specifically. And then the use of those ads, yes, Google did do the research on YouTube, which said, well, our controversy, we'll take a look. But unfortunately, the thing with Google study that they did on a bunch of advertisements of that nature, that's what they had.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Thank you. You're right, what's more?
We might as well take a few minutes to get some feedback.
Good on you to step up and just handle it. Those are all very difficult questions.
Are we gonna huddle and do the feedback?
Yeah,
Or are we gonna just stand there? Or-
You just said.
We don't mind stand. You don't mind standing awkwardly in front.
Yeah, you just want to grab chairs for yourself.
That's okay. Where's the stand? It's all big.
Yeah, you stand back to the thing. Guys, yeah, I'll go first. I have three pieces of feedback. So one's actually about the strategy and the content that you guys did today. So, especially with the partnership model on like a well-known brand, you're likely to get judges who know a lot more about specifics, as you can tell on that. Like a great answer back to you should actually have been a Scotiabank very much in the value chain because they actually own the ACC and very much into you don't know that, but if you don't know that level of detail, you gotta think more about the strategic merit of the type of partner, right? So then Ticketmaster is an example. I would rather you argue the logic of that kind of strategic partner, and then you're not anchored to any one Ticketmaster or whatnot. Maybe you can talk about stuff over SeatGeek or similar relevancies. So that's sort of one strategic, when we don't really know the partner as well as your
Guys, sorry, can you just give me down for a sec, sorry?
and Scotia is always a sponsor of JDC, so that you have people from Scotia there. So that's just some of the context there. One. Two, I thought a lot of the tactics were really, really cool ideas, tons of creativity. I think you could have taken the gamification thing one level more, which is like every loyalty program in the world with credit cards is built around some sort of point system. And it would really cool if your actual reward system is based like solely around the gamification that was the anchor versus like another way to get sports points or another way to redeem on flights or hotels or something like that. So just a thought, but lots of creativity there, and that could have maybe been the anchor because maybe your actual partnership idea wasn't that different from what was today. And then in terms of presentation for all of, so intro is fantastic, super smooth. I thought you crushed it. It was a great job. And then the transitions all the way through very smooth. The presentation was excellent. Catherine, the Q&A, your answer to me was like killer. That was a great answer. And, no, it was really good. It was actually really good bullshit. Really good bullshit. But it was it was really good bullshit. Yeah, I'm the biggest bullshitter. That was great. So that was good. And can I give like one small presentation thing? So you're nodding a lot at their things, even on things that aren't necessarily that good. Right? So you want to the reason being is you're always nodding that I don't. But there's like the right point where you want to like hammer on me. And this is the point that I want to bring up. Otherwise, the nod always becomes
Sometimes,
irrelevant.
yeah, I was like watching the time and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I was trying to make it so like,
I know you stressed. I know we stressed you with the questions, but those are the answers. So, definitely didn't need to go back to them. But that was just like the one random point. The nodding, and sometimes they're just like they're just speaking normally right now. Why are you?
That's like you're really passionate about this idea.
That's my. I thought you guys did a good job.
Couple things I just realized that actually before after Q&A ran out. A little more context maybe on the economics too. You threw out some pretty, I think, impressive numbers around market share and cost per customer. Like, I don't think necessarily to go down, they could break down the Excel and how that's calculated, but maybe a few underlying assumptions that stick with the judges is probably worthwhile, because otherwise you're likely going to get a question on that. Particularly in a space where I think like 60% market share, very fragmented space with a lot of credit card options for students to choose from. You're likely not going to be able to capture that necessarily. That's just really good assumption that I need. So, but other than that, like a presentation, I think overall very clear, articulate. And one last piece I would say on some of the content as well. Great job on creativity around the activation. Just to Ren's point, a little more on the usage and consistency of the usage of the card. And having tactics promoting that as well, probably would also help. Good job.
Same point on the financials. I think I can't remember this through 5 years, we've been making $100 million, which is great. That's fantastic. Yeah. I think if you could get more into what's going to cost you, so you threw out a lot of tactics there, but there wasn't really any numbers around how much those things cost. So I'm going to just understand $100 million. This is what our ROI is going to be. Just like what these guys said, I love how specific you guys were. It would have been easy just to say we're going to invest in social media, but you said exactly how you're going to do that. I love how you broke it up between acquisition and retention. I thought that was great.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna repeat that list of everything I was gonna say, so great job and kudos again for setting up. All right, cool. We're.
Okay, so wait, everybody stop just for a second. Anish, our flip representatives, are gonna be leaving, but I think we should express our appreciation to them once again. It's awesome that they have that they've spent their day with us, but also supported us financially to make it possible for us to do this. So thank you.
All right, I don't think I'll see you guys before the competition. I don't think. Maybe there might be something we're doing in January. We're gonna figure that out. But good luck, guys. Crush it. And if you need anything, just please shout. Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
All right.
I've been putting feedback on this.
On the slides?
Yeah.
Okay.
A noticeable number of them are missing.
Yes, okay, at the end, I had a recommendation slide, like all ready, like I had listed and everything, so it took time to fill it out, so I just had to delete it, because all I had was like a recommendation, no content, and I was like, Sophie's gonna kill me.
No, you guys, like, this is something that's not on this issue, and so I'm really glad that you guys have now.
Yeah, here,
Yeah.
do you know where the 4th floor grad room is?
You're fine, yeah.
It's at the accounting add-on table. You see your bag.
No, it's not done.
It's gonna be, if you go straight upstairs, don't worry about it.
Reso time is, I don't know what it is, I'm trying to learn. Yeah.
I brought it down already.
Yeah. Angela, it's just in 3-1.
You know, there's a chocolate right there, right?
Where?
Right. Yeah, I was using that. I was like, why is this guy using?
I never have almond classes in here. I'm all my classes.
Either. Just look around. That's it.
I didn't see it. I didn't see it.
I'm the right man. Again, you're the right guy for the job. Exactly.
Yeah, they're big.
No, this doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I did. It's not charging.
The first one.
This one?
Yeah. See?
Yeah, I know. She was trying to get me to take out.
Oh, yeah. That's no one.
Oh.
Where it is.
You guys looking at me? Yeah, I'm good.
Isn't it funny to think that even the world's most famous supermodels were once awkward, gangly teenagers? No matter how perfect or famous or glamorous you are now, at age 13 or 14, we were all awkward with braces and acne and glasses. The same will also apply in business. Every great business today was once just an idea. Amazon was once just Jeff Bezos in a dingy office with a dream to sell books. And Apple was once just a few guys in a garage who loved computers. Good afternoon, I'm Megan, this is Bonnie and Leanne. And today we would like to present to you the painkiller, if you will, to Rumi's growing pains. We have a solution focused on people, of course, to deal with the customer service difficulties you're facing right now that are underlined by the fact that our current company structure and support team doesn't support our true corporate values. So our solution was based on these decision criteria. We wanted to have a strong customer support team, of course, going forward. We wanted to have excellent customer service because we value customer service so much. We really wanted to have our culture and value alignment between our support team and our wider organization to be really solid. And finally, we wanted, of course, for whatever solution we implemented, to support growth long term. So we considered a few alternatives when developing our solution. Firstly, of course, is just to simply renew the agreement we currently have with CSP and maintain our existing support team structure. Although we found that this didn't really hit any of the decision criteria that we really valued. Next, we could find a new support team and just completely restart. But again, with the time limit we have and the fact that this doesn't support many of our decision criteria, we decided to keep looking. Finally, what we landed on was to strengthen our in-house support and continue with our outsource support, at least for the time being. So our solution can be summarized as organize, onboard, and optimize. Firstly, we want to restructure our existing customer service department, again, focusing more on bringing our support in-house. Next, we want to onboard. Of course, you asked to hire 32 new employees by the end of this year. That's something we'd like to address by automating our hiring process and focusing on digital recruitment. And finally, because training was another area you asked us to address, we'd like to focus on that as well. We'd like to increase the current training structure we have today, as well as introduce a mentorship program and e-learning through Axonify. So before we dive deeper into our recommendation, I just want to quickly fast forward and show you where this recommendation is actually going to take you. So currently today, you're sitting at 60 support staff and you're serving 1 million people. By implementing what we are suggesting, by adding the 32 new employees, you will have 48 support staff and you'll be serving 3 million people. That's 2 million that we are serving today. So now that I've shown you the outcome, now we're gonna take a few steps back to show you exactly how we're gonna get here. So as I mentioned, the first big area of the solution we're proposing to you is to restructure our customer support team. So today, your team is mostly outsourced, and we're finding that the team isn't really meeting the customer service demands that you have. The quality isn't there and the volume isn't really there either. So what we want to do is obviously add to our in-house support team, maintaining our relationship with CSP, at least in the short term, so that we can have a strong team for the year to come. So as Megan mentioned, you guys came to us with the issue like right now we are outsourcing and we are doing most of our support team through this outsourcing. We want to make sure that we're hiring and focusing more on our internal team and growing them going forward. So some of the key issues that we'll be addressing with the current situation you guys are in right now is right now you have a lack of dependability between the CSP support staff and FTE staff. And this is due to the fact that we can't really regulate them as well as they're in another geographical location, as well as they aren't really aligned with our values and there's no really strong connection that we have going forward with this. So in terms of this has led to no integration in terms of the team structures, as well as also led to a lack of motivation with the CSP staff really just wanting to meet their quota and not really focusing on the effectiveness and the quality of the service that they're providing. So what's at stake is then we really are going to start having a company culture that's not aligned throughout the whole entire company. We'll have an increase in the number of customer complaints ultimately, and ultimately we won't be able to grow with the customers or their satisfaction with the customer experience that we are hoping to go forward with. So in terms of how we're going to address this issue, our current structure is right now that we have 4 in-house agents, and so most of our outsourcing or most of our customer service is done through the 12 agents at CSP, as Megan mentioned earlier. So this is just sort of a view of what it's going to look like going forward. So not only are we going to continue to have the 4 agents, and as I mentioned before, we don't want to stray away from our outsourcing source as currently, but we want to add 32 additional agents, which you guys addressed was your asking the case. So we want to really help you provide these agents. So in terms of what this is going to look like, we just want to make sure that as going forward, we're making sure we're able to not only track these outsourcing, as we mentioned earlier, how we're going to do this, or our internal sources, making sure that they're aligned in terms of the cultural values as well. So this is important because if you really turn and look and outsource and really sort of align in terms of the company's values with the outsourcing while keeping and maintaining a new internal source, we would have better quality customer service and better alignment with our values. So in terms of this, we're going to actually show you what this is going to look like in terms of both the internal and outsourcing and who's going to handle what propositions. So our internal sources, because we believe that we have a better hold and the companies internally will have more alignment with their values and their expectations of customer service, they'll be able to our in-house team will really handle the major issues such as payment, authentication, as well as like safety issues, just to make sure that we are putting more stress on the values of our internal source. In terms of our outsourced team, they'll be more of a supportive team. So making sure that we still have those 12 employees, but they'll be really focusing on sort of the minor issues of state, such as website issues and sort of FAQs as well. So going into sort of how this culture alignment is going to work out, we're going to make sure that we do have and we do break this disconnection between culture alignment since we are maintaining that partnership with CSP. So what this is going to look like is we're going to have them more integrated in our team events. So currently we do a lot of great events such as hosting dinners, and we're making sure that they are included in this as well. This will not only provide them with the opportunity to see what be more inclined and more intuitive into our teammates, but also be able to help them really attend events. We'll also show them that their work makes a difference to our company as a whole and provide them with that task significance. In terms of as well, we want to make sure that we are providing a new way in order to really maintain and evaluate the performance. So in regards to this right now, as I mentioned earlier, they're kind of just shifting through calls and making sure that they meet their quota and sort of even hanging up if the call takes too long. We want to prevent this from happening going forward and make sure we're coming up with a new way to actually evaluate this performance. So in terms of this, we're going to have, we're actually going to get people we're going to send out digital surveys on the performance evaluation of the call above our customer satisfaction to the customers that we are serving to make sure that we are sort of evaluating any disconnect and any problems that are occurring with these two teams to make sure that we are evaluating performance based on the best criteria as possible.
So just to summarize what we know, what we'd like to do is move the majority of our customer service in-house as opposed to outsourcing, which we're doing today. We'd also like to really strengthen the culture bond between CSP and Roomies. We'd like to do this by inviting CSP staff to our culture events and also giving them promotional culture materials that they can keep in their office, really to strengthen that culture because that is so important to Roomies. What we'd also like to do is reward performance in a different way. So today, CSP staff are paid on a per ticket close basis, which doesn't really emphasize quality. What we'd like to do is instead have performance evaluations for the quality of the customer service provided, so that again, our values of customer service are emphasized through our practices. Moving forward to the next part, one of the big issues in this case was that we need to hire 32 new support staff by December 2018. What we'd like to do is revamp, totally restructure our hiring practices, move very digital. We'd also like to introduce some more active recruiting, as today we are only passively recruiting. We expect this will lead to not only the 32 new hires we need in the year to come, but also allow us to hire for support roles in the future and also for other corporate roles for years to come.
So currently, you're in a position where you need to hire 32 new agents within the next 12 months. But from the previous hiring, it took 3 months just to hire 4 agents, which means it's a very long and extensive hiring process. So we want to make sure that we have a solution for this, because if we don't resolve this long hiring process, then you're really going to find that your company isn't growing as fast as it can possibly grow. And then there's also the possibility that you might not be able to hire those 32 new agents within that time restriction. So the way that we're gonna do this is we're actually proposing to automate the hiring process. So we wanna move away from the original CV, and we wanna actually implement an online form, and it would be extracted from LinkedIn itself. So this would be the first step. So new applicants would go and they would fill out this online form. And then after this form has been uploaded, they will receive an invitation to do 20 minutes of gamification activities. And this would test their personality, and it would just kind of get a little more information about this applicant. And then provided that they pass this step, we are also proposing to have a video interview that would be assessed by a software. So this software would actually assess the language that the potential candidate is using, their tone, and just their body language in general to see if they would actually pass on to the next stage. And then if they were to pass on, only then would they be invited on site to live a day in the life in this company. And this is how we're gonna really structure this Roomie Support Dream Team. So we really wanna make sure that we're automating this process so it's no longer taking 1 month, and it's actually a lot faster, and we're not actually wasting a lot of time and doing one-on-one interviews, and we can actually be screening applicants beforehand. And a company that actually uses this and has implemented this 4-step process has been very successful is Unilever. So before, they used to be bringing in six applicants at their last stage to do a one-on-one interview, and it took 4 months for them to actually complete this hiring process. And after implementing this new 4-step process, what they found is they actually only had 2 applicants at the very end. It only took 2 weeks for the hiring process to take place, which is a huge improvement from the 4 months. So what we can see happening with Roomies is that the current 1-month hiring process can actually be reduced to about 1 week, which is going to save a lot of time and a lot of money. And in addition to this, we also want to ensure that we are continuously recruiting. We don't just want to stop at changing our hiring process. We want to make sure that we're still recruiting new and active potential candidates. So we're proposing having this job posted through Indeed and LinkedIn, as well as Facebook. And the reason that we are proposing Facebook is because this social media website will actually attract a lot of new recruits. A survey that was conducted a couple months ago found that 75% of the millennials who took part in that survey said that they actually found their last position through a social media website, which is why we really want to implement a social media platform that will help us recruit. And we also want to offer a 10% discount for people who refer Roomies to one of their friends, and they actually log on and they actually use this platform. And this will be an incentive that they can use to attract more people not only to use our website, but also for employment. And in addition, something I just want to touch on is a question always comes up as to who's going to be doing all of this. So in the short term, we are going to have Alejandro, who's going to be doing this. And in the long term, we are proposing to have an HR team, but we'll go into depth about that in the implementation plan, but it is something to keep in mind that we have considered. And just to kind of show you who exactly we are looking for when we are recruiting these new employees, is we want people who are high on those people skills, because it's a very customer service oriented company, and customer service is a priority to you. And we also want people who are tech savvy. So as you can see through this map, the Roomie Support Dream is in the top right, which is exactly where we want to be. And although we will be attracting those software engineers and that old school support, we really want to be in that top right, and that's how we're going to make sure that we're recruiting the right people.
So again, today your hiring process takes a long time and you're not actively recruiting, which just won't work for the high growth phase you're expecting to see in the next year. So what we're proposing is a total restructure of our hiring, going very digital, copying a model pioneered by a trusted name like Unilever, and also changing our recruiting tactics so that we're getting the high tech and high people skills people that we need for this organization to succeed. So moving on, again, another ask that was mentioned in the page was training. You're finding that the CSP agents aren't trained to the same caliber that Roomies agents are, and that Roomies agents are taking a really long time to train. So what we want to do is introduce a longer initial onboarding training to really get those skills up to par faster. We also want to introduce a mentorship program so that there's more social support for employees in the future. And we also want to use Axonify to train both our employees and CSP employees to really keep customer service skills up in the long term.
Yes, as mentioned before, some of the key issues that are going right now is it takes a really long time to actually effectively train these employees. And currently they're experiencing that people feel as if it takes 3 to 6 months for employees to be actually adequate at doing the job well. As well as right now, it takes 1.5 months, so that was only for the internal employees. For outsourcing, it takes 1.5 months to train the CSP. This has led to overall low motivation and very frustrated and hostile agents. So what's at stake is, again, moving forward or moving more into our customer service reputation. That is when we're not only our strong value, but also something that we want to be replicable in the future. So that's at stake going forward if you were to continue with this. And as well as the overall company growth. So making it a very long process to meet the growth rate that you guys want to be acquiring. So in terms of this, we are proposing that we, as Megan mentioned, really help go forward with our training process. So in terms of what we're going to be doing is that currently we don't want to take away the onboarding process that you have now, but actually make it a little bit longer. So right now you guys are onboarding new hires and training them for 1 week on a one-to-one basis. We want to actually increase that to 2 weeks. So now that people feel more prepared and you're not just sort of throwing them out as you guys are doing currently, but making sure that we are preparing them to the full of its ability and on the onboarding skills. So in addition to actually training them one-on-one for the full 2 weeks, we also are proposing that we sort of establish as well as an informal mentorship program. So in terms of this, utilizing the employees that we currently have right now to really help train and make people feel more comfortable as well as supportive with this new customer facing role. As we recognize that with all sort of customer service roles, it's not one size fits all. So we want to make sure that we do provide this additional support. As well, we want to also provide and go another step forward and take you on a continuous sort of training as well. So we also want to be utilizing skills or utilizing sort of e-learning devices such as Exonify. So we're proposing that you guys partner up with Exonify and utilize their platforms to really make sure that we are effectively and continuously developing and training our employees. So in terms of what Exonify is, it's a digital platform that allows continuous bursts of training to its employees. And we can modify it to make sure that we're really effectively showing and communicating the importance of customer experiences, and as well as by providing sort of cases, for instance, on how you could really go ahead and how our employees can adjust certain situations. So we're just making sure that we are, above all, really giving them the tools to develop this customer experience and how they can handle different situations. So how this has worked in the past is that it's actually been known that by utilizing Exonify, it has increased participation rates among employees in terms of training 80%. As well as it's encouraged a knowledge lift, so people are absorbing more information, 20 to 80 times % more. And lastly, after doing a survey of employees who use Exonify, 80% of them feel more effective in terms of their performance, which is something we really want to hit and something that will be really valuable for this company growing in the future.
So again, two-year training takes a long time, and what we really want to do is introduce new training programs that are going to be a little less sink or swim, so that employees have ongoing support, and also training that is collaborative and more aligned with your values. So we outlined a solution for you that'll take roomies to the next Airbnb, but we also want to give you a detailed plan to actually get it done.
So this is just a quick overview, and it's broken down between short, medium, and long term. So in the short term, this is when we want to invite the CSP staff so they can join us, as well as this is the stage we want to really develop that hiring process, begin recruiting, and actually communicate all of these changes to our team. And this is also when we're going to be developing our new training, which will take us into the medium term. In the medium term, we actually like to roll out the programs that we developed in the short term. So we want to, once we have our new hiring process developed, we want to start hiring, obviously. We also want to, being aware of change management, really describe to all employees what the new hiring process is and what the new training is, so that everyone's on the same page. We also like to begin extending offers by the 8-month mark, so that we can be training people so that they're ready for the 12-month period that he requested. In the long term, we are now going to be hiring the new HR staff, and as well as making sure that we are hiring the 32 new internal sources that we have. And just to quickly go over some risks. So some risks that we've identified is the time constraint, of course, but we are going to be mitigating this through effective practices. The cultural alignment is through involving all employees, and a lot of applicants is through a more productive approach.
So we've outlined a solution for you and given you a plan to actually accomplish it. Through this plan, you'll be able to scale roomies for a long time to come and really, firstly, get those 32 new hires you need, and then continue hiring for a long time. Thank you. I'll take any questions you have now.
What is all the software engineers that makes them not blow people's face?
I'm
just kidding.
Great presentation. So based on your recommendation, about 75% of the support agents will then now be in-house. And given that there weren't really any budget constraints for us as an organization, why not just bring everybody in-house? So what's the benefit of maintaining that relationship with CSP?
So the reason that we want to maintain that relationship, especially in the short term, is because we are expecting to grow in the coming years. Actually, just in this year itself, we are going to be hiring those 32 additional employees. And as well, it was mentioned that you guys are also seeing an increase in volume. So we don't want our internal employees to feel overwhelmed and have to focus on things that can be outsourced, which is why we are recommending that the deeper issues are handled internally to really maintain that customer service reputation, whereas the ones that can easily be handled be outsourced.
So great answer. But with any people change in any organization, often these things come in all waves or phased approaches. So in the longer term, or after the short term is complete, does it make sense to still maintain that relationship?
In the long term, we think we'd still like to outsource the really minor issues. We don't want our in-house staff to be overwhelmed by small things. We really want to make sure we're delivering high quality. And we want to have an in-house staff that can handle that. But we don't want to be having our in-house staff, because we need them to be trained at such a high caliber, to be dealing with really minor issues. We want them to spend their time on things that matter.
So if you think you're gonna maintain a relationship, it's gonna be the right partner to maintain a relationship if you're focused on quality.
That was something we considered. We know that CSP was not really your first choice of support. It was something that was because you're a small company. We think that once we maintain a relationship with them in the short term, once we have our in-house support really built up, one thing you can do is start looking at other bigger service providers who might be more aligned with you in terms of quality, in terms of culture. That's something you can look at in the future.
So for your new comp incentives, I like the idea of now starting to measure or grade people on performance by quality, but how do you measure that? How do you measure quality?
Yeah, so in terms of that, we want to make sure that we're setting aside and going forward, looking to really establish like performance evaluations in terms of sort of on a level basis. So in terms of making sure that it's well known to both internally as well as for our customers, the sort of level of satisfaction that we're going to include in the survey. So for instance, if, so say if the level was a level 1, what does this actually look like? And putting out strong criteria that is understandable and communicated effectively to both the consumers as well as internally, so that we do have an effective, reliable as well as valid evaluation metrics. So then after that, we are able to deal with who is being assigned what evaluation. And if measured over a continuous amount, we'll be able to more effectively assign reliable evaluation to that performer, to that.
So to confirm, we're gonna have the customers give feedback on the survey. How are we gonna get them to fill out the surveys? I know that's really tough to do.
Yeah, so in terms of that, we believe that because Roomies is really targeted towards people who are looking for roommates most of the time, or people who will be dealt with, sort of have the ability to have like a digital phone or a tablet or mobile device. They'll be sending the survey right after the evaluation. So in terms of this, just having that immediate connection with the consumer, so it's sort of not waiting in the long run. It's not an email that they can sort of avoid, but rather maybe through text message, because we do already have their contact information. So this way we'll both have an immediate response and something that they'll think right away after that they got the message.
But let's just argue that it's very difficult to get a great data set sometimes, and a lot of customers might not actually use that response, like kind of the way you don't always evaluate your driver right away when you get it right away. Why not build a compensation fund that has a mix of those kind of metrics and some real quantitative ones, especially because you guys do quality will drive sales. So why isn't sales and some of those number-based metrics that are quantifiable also a part of it?
Yeah, it turns out we definitely as well look at to really qualify in terms of not only performance, but as well as maybe like metrics along the lines of what you mentioned before. That's something that we could definitely include in the long run to sort of come up with evaluation metrics for that. Overall, in terms of our strategy, we just want to make sure that we are getting away from the right now really just evaluating based on a number of customers they serve, but rather on the actual performance and the quality of the service that we provide instead.
I gotta very good appearance here. Welcome back at 4. Okay.
Feedback or?
Yeah, let's give you some feedback before the next meeting.
So, first things first. Great fucking job. Wow. That was what we were working towards for weeks, and I don't know. I have like very minor comments, but I'll say I'm excited to see you guys have this competition.
Yeah, one small one for me, I think, yeah, great presentation, really articulated all three, great presenters, really enjoyed it. What's interesting with support, I find, is like maybe one slide or one of the nuances of content that they've been good at is really taking the view of the customer. Because at the end of the day, like, support is all about helping your customers. And to me, whenever I think of this, and you have like outsourced support, in-house support, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the request is, the customer should not feel any different whether they're contacting roomies or contacting CSP or whoever. So very, very minor, but I think a little bit of the content piece around just that, saying at the end of the day, regardless of what model we choose, we're just going to preserve that seamless experience for the customer for all types of requests from low, medium, and high. I think it just kind of paints a really nice picture, really ties a nice bow on the recommendation and that is that, hey, it doesn't really matter what structure we choose, we feel this one's the best. And by the way, the customer's going to know it's a great experience throughout, regardless of what their issue is. But aside from that, I had a really good job. That was a very good recommendation.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was in HR consulting, I was very impressed. Not gonna lie. So I really had much feedback. The only thing is, when you're talking about the recruitment, one thing I'd say is you guys have nailed it with efficiency, but a lot of the struggle is getting the right talent. And really, you necessarily mentioned like, whether you had a benchmark on how you identify and get the right people. So like 32 people that are perfect fit sometimes takes longer, and you can't really optimize this on your individual screen, right? You can maybe, I don't know, like how it's gonna go, but that's kind of my help.
They've all been very complimentary, and I agree. Like it was a great presentation, super compelling. That was like one of the few presentations where like I was able to never feel distracted for 20 minutes minus from the software engineering point, but that was very, very compelling. It was very compelling. A little bit of more content stuff, because I actually ran feedback on structure metrics. You guys know that. Just a few ideas that you could look into, because I'm not truly an HR guy, but like one area that I really think you could talk a little bit more about would be compensation strategy in general. Compensation strategy comes down to like understanding incentives of who the different stakeholders are, and there's so much out there, but the right way to think about compensation is usually like plotting the three stakeholders and being very clear on what drives their behavior, and that usually drives your incentive strategy. So I'll put it out there if you guys want to message me and grab some time to talk about compensation very specifically. That's one area that I think there's a lot that you can be innovative about. Another thing I look at is a couple weeks ago I was reading a really good McKinsey write-up on new models for customer service and how that industry for like regular retail has really, really changed. One, because you can actually get good quality sales talent who wants to work at places like Ruby's, right? That's one reason. The second reason is like the traditional customer service model isn't working, it's like digitally integrated. So I'll try to find it, but if you guys went on McKinsey Insights and found that they did a really good job of talking about new models for customer service in small format businesses. So worth looking up. I didn't actually read it properly, but like when I read the exact summary, it seemed like big tidbits for these things.
Just on that point, if you guys incorporate tech in the screening process, there's a lot of tech involved in the customer service process as well, which is really audience. Tax in there, a lot of that first level screening that CSP does is actually automated now. So like when you see that pop up that's like, hi, I'm Jeremy from blah blah blah, it's bot.
Yeah. They did also say that those quick feedback type things that you're expecting from the customer are very, very low, have very low response rates, just for your side, right? Like, so I think like a lot of those things that show up where you expect them to review right there on some text don't have very great adoption rates. It was also in that same article. So you have lots of time to think about it, but just worth a really good job.
If I can jump in as well, so to echo, you did an amazing job. I've got lots of feedback that I've provided on your slides as you were presenting. And so what we'll do is we'll share those decks afterwards with the team so that you can go into the notes pages and see. The one piece that I'm going to challenge you on, two things actually, is with respect to the automated hiring process, you talked about a 20-minute gamification of activities. Why do you need to gamify those activities? If I'm motivated, if I'm applying for a job, you don't need to gamify them for me. You need to just walk me through a process of asking questions and getting answers to things that you care about. Yes?
So,
No?
we just take what you did because obviously the trust and they kind of have the branding power. But what they found is that when they introduced it, they actually got double the applicants. And because this wasn't a company that was doing active recruiting, we thought that anything where you would get more applicants could be helpful, and I think making it fun and faster is kind of part of that.
Okay, so that didn't come through to me, and I apologize if you said it and I missed it.
No, we should have said it, yeah.
And we had fun with the no budget, that's also why.
No one sounds great.
Yeah, so that was the one, because I was kind of like, why are we gamifying this? I can't see the reasons for it. And so having that, and that actually brings me to the second point. When you pitched Axonify, I agree, because it's great, but you're gonna have judges that aren't familiar with it and don't understand the why. And so and I put some notes in the slide deck about it. The fact that what you first have to do is set up, and you did context really well throughout it. So that's the one piece where I think context is something to think about if you are gonna pitch something like that. And I agree that you should pitch something like that. Things like microlearning, we absorb. What are the problems with current training processes, right? The fact that I've got too much information thrown at me at once, I don't absorb it. The fact that I'm not ready for it. The fact that I move through, I'm learning and understanding at a different pace compared to my neighbor. The fact that my brain has to be ready for it. And so these are all flaws in the let's all sit in the classroom for 2 weeks and learn about something. And then plus my areas of weakness, the things that I'm not picking up are going to be different from what perhaps Mike isn't picking up in the same training process. What Axonify does, and not just Axonify, but others, but Axonify does, is they solve all of those issues. It's micro-learning, so there's little bits and pieces coming at you. Knowledge is digestible the way food is. Throw too much at me, I'm not enjoying any of it. I'm not absorbing it, okay? Number two, by putting it into a digital online platform, Mike can move through the things he's really good at, and the platform itself delivers him content on the pieces he's not quite as good at. Does the same thing for me on the different items, right? Plus, we engage with the stuff when we have time, and we're ready to do it. And the gamification piece encourages us to go back and keep redoing it. So these are the kinds of things that you want to be able to pitch before you then say, like, here's the problems, right, that we need to solve. Here's a platform that can solve these. Here's why it solves it, right? So that it's kind of like, cool, I learned something that I didn't know I could do, right? And then your use case about the fact that how much it improves performance. Absolutely.
I would just echo that. Like, I think it was good because I was really hoping I saw Axonify, I was really hoping you were going to explain it, but I would love that kind of explanation too.
Yeah.
Just a bit of an analogy or something, because you're just kind of saying there's this tool that we're going to use that does this, but it's going to be funny because I feel like we're going to be the only team that would possibly use Axonify, and we should explain. Because it's not.
Was it by like the extra description of what it is, you can even further?
Just that piece.
Just the why?
But even a sentence on like the company and why it's like a relevant, credible person on that topic is probably, a lot of people don't know it's on.
Yeah, okay.
So overall, great job.
Yeah.
Sure, so we have a ton of feedback on there. The one thing I'm just gonna be careful of going in case you guys get one of the cases that are sponsored, and the company comes in, it just sounds hilarious, and I should be the last person to say this, but be very careful not being like too harsh with the status quo.
Oh, yeah, you're the.
I've been known to tell, like, I've been very harsh.
Your company should.
Yeah. You just be a little careful of that, probably, so.
I've actually got feedback like that in an overall spreadsheet a thing I'm creating that says, so it's not that it was actually Leanne.
It was me, I said that they
wrote them It's never a weakness, it's always an opportunity for improvement.
I literally couldn't stop laughing over that too.
All right, I think next.
Yeah, all right, we're good.
Thank you.
Everybody's coming back here at the end, yes?
And then we're heading to the pictures.
Because what I want to do is, I forgot what I want to do. There was a reason that I wanted the teams back here. Oh, yeah, so we could summarize where everybody's on.
Okay.
Are you still recording on?
I'm still recording, yeah.
It should be right underneath your,
Yeah.
I'm sure someone else, I'm not the person that understands that.
I literally just chucked mine to Ish. I just chucked mine to Ish now.
What's the occasion?
I think it should. Oh, I should do it again.
Everybody
Upstairs.
knows that they should be coming back at the end, yes? Because I wanted to, like, so that we could quickly tell them how many people are disqualified.
Like all of them.
Really? They all talk.
Besides NIS.
Really? So they win?
I guess. Well, like, I think there's one team that wasn't disqualified, but they saved their USBP the wrong name or something like that. And then Entra was good, but at the 20-minute mark, it didn't actually upload onto their USBP, so we had a blank it. But like, other than that, MIS is the only one that's got it down right. So.
Well, that's important for them.
Just one.
Upstairs. I love Anton. Look at him. He's so cute.
Sonia, actually an allowable icon. The pig.
They said we have the most recent version of Microsoft PowerPoint, so I think it has icons. I can double check those.
Let's make sure that every team knows that's what they're playing about. Once we're not.
How are you?
All right. We ready?
Yes, you guys are, just start.
So I was on the phone with Scotiabank a few days ago, interest charges and such, and we went to end the phone call, and the advisor stopped me and he said, sir, we're very excited to tell you that our breakthrough voice recognition software has created a digital copy of your voice, and you're not gonna have to answer any security questions next time you call in. I was astounded. This is disruptive neural network technology making its way into my banking software. And believe it or not, this is not the first time we've had this type of technological breakthroughs in the financial industry. Now, Scotiabank's come a long way in 3 years, but we want to see it go even further. My name is Harjak, this is Anton and Griffin, and today we're here to present you the future of Scotiabank.
Thanks, Harjak. So what are we looking for? Well, right now, we've eliminated our technical debt. We're in a great place. We have many technologies to pursue, and we're confused, but clearly there's a lot of opportunity here. And we've been accumulating data, but we're not quite sure what to do with it. But facing us right now, current issues that we can leverage these situations into is a lack of differentiation between the banks in Canada. We have a risk of disruption from rising fintechs. We need to keep our pulse on innovation. And finally, defending against large tech as well. And they fund some of our competitors and disrupt. So these are all different directions we could go. And really, what we're looking for is a strategic direction for what we truly believe is a tech-driven future. So what do we actually need to establish a long-term plan for success? We have a few different questions around this. How can we differentiate ourselves, and what value do we provide consumers among all these different classes of competitors? How does our strategy actually leverage big data, which is a key strategic focus that we decided on? And can we ensure user security at the same time, which is a big topic as well? How can we align ourselves to innovate? And how can we manage smooth organizational change as we're enacting all these tough solutions? So a three-pronged strategy to ensure long-term success. We start with scale. That's really what we have over our competitors, especially with smaller fintechs. And so we leverage scale both across our product and also our regulatory, where we have existing relationships and processes and enabling them not. So that provides an experience that disruptors cannot at that scale. We have data, so we're investing in advanced ML research and enhancing our product offering both from a data perspective and security. And finally, alignment, we're enhancing all of this structure and becoming the disruptor. So really being proactive rather than reactive. So let's start with scale. And this is all about how we can do something that others cannot, which was a clear ask. So we make our risk management an advantage. We provide a convenient, complete package using that risk management, and then we communicate that to customers, communicate why security and privacy and all the things that we're positioned to do are important. And so what that gives us is really a defensible advantage. So what I want to suggest is we take risk management, which is traditionally seen as a cost center, and turn it into driving defensibility. So we have many fintechs attempting to disrupt the industry. The ones that are really positioned to disrupt us are focused in B2C markets. We're not going to be competing with pawn shops at this stage. So they're looking for partner or purchase exits. We have to be aware of that as we make our decisions. Now, they're actually limited by regulatory barriers. In finance and as well as tangential industries like insurance, regulatory barriers are a big reason for their failure. And that also limits their geography. They can only focus on one given geography and focus and solve the regulatory challenges in that space. And the VCs have started to mitigate that by establishing regulatory relationships that they can help their startups with, but it's clearly a big barrier. And so what I want to suggest is Scotiabank leverages big data and regulatory compliance for our advantage. So what does this look like? So what I'm suggesting is we actually take some commonality between the legal and compliance department and the cybersecurity department and bring those two together. So the legal compliance department is going to be something that's Ottawa-based, that's focusing on lobbying government relations, so we can predict regulatory change, which is a clear threat, and their tasks and compliance audits. And then we have juxtaposed the cybersecurity department, which will be in Israel, leading cybersecurity cluster. It gives us a pulse on cyber innovation, and they will pursue security audits. But what they both do is they both monitor internal processes and data flow. And so we will be establishing linkages digitally between them so they can collaborate and share information and kind of pursue the same goals. So there's clearly advantage to such a strategic focus. Now, let's look at taking all of this and what does this actually give the consumer? Well, first I want to start with simplifying the user experience. So one of the key things we have is an omni-channel product experience. I'm going to focus on the bolded product lines as they're most relevant. So you have unified KYC and AML, where you can establish a single user identity across these product lines. With a fintech, you have to go through a bunch of regulatory hoops just to set up on their platform. We can do that once and then scale that to different products they're using. And then obviously simple money transfer between the different products. So overall, the user gets a complete package, whether it be in their banking, in their insurance, money management. And then we also get a broader set of data, and data is more useful when it's contextualized. So we have data from these different departments and that can all build on a single identity. So we can create combined risk profiles. We can, on the marketing side, have a single user identity for CRM and for targeting. Now, finally, so we build all this stuff. We need to actually communicate it to the customer. And I think this is where we can really shine against big tech. We have an alignment between what the user wants and we want. We want high regulatory compliance. We want the privacy and security of the user data, something that the likes of Google or Facebook clearly don't. So that's something that we have at our core. Now we have to just tell that to the customers. That's our message that we're the most secure and trusted bank, and then our mediums. So we can bring back, Cambridge Analytica came and passed. It's not at the top of mind. So if we focus on things like PSAs to remind users why their data is so important, that will be a big advantage to us, path to pursue. And so, what's the outcome here? We need a strategic direction, as mentioned. We need to keep pulse on innovation, and we need to defend against large tech. So, focusing on regulation, compliance, and cybersecurity provides us a strategic direction that, as I said, is difficult for disruptors to copy. We have an established cybersecurity practice that keeps pulse on actually relevant innovation. You know, there's a lot of things we could pursue. Cybersecurity should be one of them, coupled with data. And a security-conscious marketing effort really juxtaposes us versus the big tech companies, what we want and what they want, and puts us as the good guys in the eyes of consumers.
So the next key pillar for creating a robust strategy is having a good data play. Data, the actual content of it, is not something that we need to worry too much about. If we scan the American history of Congress 27,000 times, that's how much content every single day at Scotiabank. However, there are a few flaws that we need to address, and that's how we store our data and also how we analyze our data. Unfortunately, the methods for analyzing this data isn't something that you could just copy and paste some code for. So unfortunately, I'm not the guy for the job. We have to find some advanced machine learning research scientists to be able to draw key insights from this data. And then the outcome of that is it will have an enhanced product offering and even increase user security. So a lot of these meetings for technology, all of these buzzwords are being thrown around. Have you implemented AI? Do you have cloud yet in your business? How about IoT? And what's your big data strategy? It's no wonder no one wants to go to them. So what we want to do for you today is separate the signal from the noise. We want to explain to you what exactly you need to understand to be able to have a comprehensive data play. So the first thing that was mentioned before was Hadoop. First off, let's just paint a bit of context. When you're working with SQL or relational databases, you might have to have different silos of data that are moving all around the place, and you have to query individually from each one. Anytime someone wants to make an iteration of insight, they have to go to each one of these, all siloed across the place, and it takes so much longer. What we're proposing to do is create a central place to query our data so that these scientists and any other analysts who want to draw analytical insights from it can actually query from it and be able to do it at a much faster rate. We propose using the Hadoop distributed file system, which is just a way to create a bunch of your data sources all put into one. And the method that it uses for actually getting the data from it, it allows trillions of records to be found at once, as opposed to our traditional SQL databases. And it really speeds up our insight iterations. The second pillar is, of course, increased analysis. So with the tale of Arjab, when he went to Scotiabank and he just said, hey, this is me, like you don't need to authenticate anymore. And they said, okay, so it's sent to a server, send it back, and it's good, right? But if I say, hopefully it shouldn't work, right? But then if I maybe lower my voice a bit or do some hackery on the side, what if it does work? We need to make sure that our users can find their trust in us and that our security is really future-proof, just to ensure that none of these scenarios ever happen. In fact, Baidu, Google Research, and a lot of these other extremely advanced technology companies already have systems where they have a generalized model, and if you talk for just 1 minute, it could replicate your voice. And we need some advanced scientists to be able to figure out what some of these computer-generated voices are and what a bona fide voice is, and the threshold for determining what's legit and what's not. So we need to be able to actually, as I said before, hire these scientists and do something that our current capabilities don't actually allow us to do. And to do that, we have to actually hire an advanced research department. So with advanced machine learning, when I say something like that, then it's expected that it wouldn't go through. Of course, it'll just give me a failure. And we just want to make sure that our users, even though how amazed they are at them having automatic voice recognition, we don't want them to have that canceled out by their account eventually being hacked by me with some trickery. And then in addition to this, once we have an advanced security layer already established, we're able to have this be highly generalizable. We're able to allow this voice recognition to be applied to other things like Amazon Alexa or Google Home, and further supporting this entirely mobile-first software. We're able to even just do banking through Alexa or Home or your phone without any risk of fearing that someone could just replicate your voice and access your credentials. So the outcomes of all of this is that we're going to have a little less data siloing, which we'll be querying from. We want to be able to leverage big data, which we believe we've addressed, from being able to make use of all of the records that we have and have our advanced scientists be able to derive insights from. And we're differentiated because no other banks have a dedicated research department where they're hiring some of the top 10, 15 scientists in the world to go off and do their own research where we could get product decisions from.
Perfect. That brings us to our final pillar.
And really what we're gonna focus here on is not only do we have the scale and not only are we gonna invest in the data, we also need to ensure that we're aligned to actually tackle this. Right now, there is a tremendous degree of turbulence in terms of innovations and disruptors in this entire industry. So what does that mean? That means aligning our organizational structure as well as our change management to ensure we can actually handle any innovations and any turbulence we might face. The outcome, a very lean organization that's aligned to stay at the top. So we'll start with structural flexibility, and I'll start with a little anecdote. We have BlackRock here, one of the largest wealth asset management firms in the world. And they do wealth management, and they do that through advisors typically. And this has been a strategy that's worked very well for them in the past, until recently, where we now have robo-advisors. Now these are little startup fintechs that have come up all over America and Canada that are trying to automate the advisor type of experience. And what's that resulted in is BlackRock has actually taken the initiative to go ahead and actually acquire Future Advisor, one of those fintech startups, and put that as a branch under its advisors. Now this is very interesting, and it's even more interesting because I happened to intern at Future Advisor when this happened. So I have a lot of first-hand experience as to what makes a good acquisition, especially in this type of industry. So let's talk about it. What this means is we're able to keep a pulse on fintech and stay ahead. That means we want to have that autonomy. Autonomy is absolutely key. That means giving that fintech that ability to operate and create that change value that it really, really requires. Next is alignment. You can't be a bank coming in a three-piece suit and have people in shorts and slippers coming in to work. You're going to have a lot of friction there. Ensuring everyone that you're going to be acquiring, there's complete synergies across the board. And finally, ensuring that you have ease of onboarding. That initial year where I was at Future Advisor was very difficult because it took a lot of time bringing systems over from BlackRock into Future Advisor, bringing systems from Future Advisor over to BlackRock. So it's extremely important that this entire process is extremely formalized and made very simple to ensure we can keep that pulse on fintech and stay ahead. Next, let's consider, could we do better? Right now we have credit systems, account management, treasury systems, risk management, even wealth management. But really what we need is a research division. Now Griffin touched on this very gently, and I think it's very important that we take a deeper dive into it and realize that there's a tremendous amount of value we can have in a dedicated division that is specifically in regards to researching new and innovative and disruptive technologies. The question now is how do we integrate that with the rest of our organization? That means we have to have a vertical integration across that research division to all facets of the organization. And we do that through a PM role, which is basically a single individual that's actually going to transform all those crazy ideas and innovations into tangible business deliverables. So what does that mean? That means we now have to remain competitive against banks and startups by transforming research into deliverables. That means we'll be hiring 2 data scientists, 5 data engineers, as well as 1 PM to ensure the fluidity of this entire process. Now, the last part is kind of interesting, and it draws specifically from McKinsey's framework of change management. And it's extremely important anytime we have any form of any change across the organization, that strategy needs to be managed appropriately. So we start with role modeling, which is extremely important. It means there's a manager level buy-in. Everyone from the top of the organization now needs to believe in the strategy we're proposing, as well as ensure that we have the specific change leaders that embody that change we want. That ensures every individual across the organization is going to be interested and buy into our strategy. The next is reinforcing via mechanisms. That means providing monetary incentives for individuals that come up with those innovative ideas, really pushing innovation and disruption, and integrating technology into our very mission statement itself. Finally, we're going to have to develop talent. That means enhanced training modules, something we'll touch on later on in cost, but ensuring that every individual across the organization is knowledgeable as to what's happening in other facets, ensuring that everyone is educated as to what is big data, and ensuring that there's a concentrated amount of training going into each individual member. Finally, that means fostering understanding across the organization. And this very much means that there's early communication and transparency across the whole organization. Everyone needs to know what's going on. They need to know earlier on what's going on, and they need to be comfortable with any changes that are occurring. And we can suggest this framework because it's been found that across different organizations, we've had up to 70% of change management fail because they're incapable of convincing their entire organization of their strategy. So ensuring that we have this organization-wide change management will ensure that our strategy will be adopted across the entire organization. Now, let's remind ourselves, what are the outcomes here? First, we wanted to prevent fintech disruption. That was one of the key things. We wanted to avoid these little startups from coming up and taking away our market share. Next, we want to remain competitive in the industry. We don't want RBC coming in with their new innovative technology and taking away our market share. And finally, we want to align our organization with our strategy. So we believe that we've effectively done this through structural flexibility that ensures that we're staying afloat amongst new entrants by allowing ourselves to have quality acquisitions of fintech, research divisions that help us remain at the forefront of innovation and disruption, and then finally change management itself, which ensures that the organization-wide adoption of this strategy is very effective.
So now onto the risks, costs, and a bit of implementation details. So as for the cost breakdown, we believe that it'll be around $8.4 million or so of recurring costs, with around $56,000 of upfront costs. Now, to address one of the biggest deviations that might come up is why we're paying our director of machine learning research so much. We want to get one of the top 10 or 15 people, like Google or Baidu or Facebook does, and to be able to direct these efforts, to be able to have generalizable results so good that once we have this information, that we'll be able to apply it to product decisions. And unfortunately, it is an industry standard. OpenAI, which is a nonprofit, they're paying their director of research $2 million. So we see that that's going to be one of our biggest cost drivers. And as for directors of cybersecurity and legal, we'll need one of those as well. And then in addition, we're going to be hiring 20 cybersecurity and legal analysts as well. And as for the implementation plan, we bucketed it into 2 key points for each bucket. So for scale, we're going to want to focus on our marketing campaign just around after 1 quarter. And then we're going to want to refactor our products to enhance user experience right around after that. We're going to want to start off by searching for good candidates at the beginning and also searching for other disruptive startups that you might want to acquire. Then after that, once we get a few good researchers in, then we can actually start our research, and then we can actually start to apply some of the results that they came up with to our new products.
We'll touch on a little bit of risks and contingencies as well, because those are extremely important to consider. The first one is disagreements on acquisitions, and this can happen both on our end as well as post-acquisition. And the way that we're going to really mitigate that risk is formalizing that same procedure. It's extremely important: autonomy, alignment, and onboarding. Hitting each of those 3 points will help mitigate any disagreements, whether it's from our end on whether to acquire or post-acquisition if we're feeling any friction. The next one is a lack of deliverables from research. We're investing millions of dollars into this entirely new division. What if 3 years later we have nothing to show for it? This is extremely important because now we want to hire more PMs that are going to be able to convert that research into onboarding, as well as gently guide research efforts if we need to have more focus.
Thanks, Harvey. So what I started with is setting up our company to be uniquely positioned to innovate in this space from a regulatory and scale perspective. And then Harjav and Griffin really went into how we can make headway into this innovation, start thinking about acquisition, and start working on this early on. But we believe this is a defensible strategy that's going to work long term, because the banks are all worried about these small fintechs and what's something that we can do that they cannot do.
Thank you.
Can you explain a little bit more the linkage between data and cybersecurity and how that helps grow the business rather than it's just kind of internal improvements and more so how to implement factors?
So we know that regulation is starting to become a big driver of how we use data. For NPR, companies rearrange a lot of what they do. So from a cybersecurity perspective, it's about preventing any lawsuits and any mishandling of data, which we know is a big risk from past news events. We also want to figure out how we best handle the data, and that might be focused on where we use actually raw user data versus metadata, what the pipeline is, who looks at what data, right? You need management of permissions. So cybersecurity and compliance are both looking at data flows, who has access. And so we see a lot of commonalities there. That's the key driver between management of data and regulatory and security compliance.
How does it help? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Another facet to address, if that was what your follow-up question, was the relationship between, say, machine learning and cybersecurity. We want to be able to kind of shut off one of these vectors of attack, say through voice recognition or something of that other sort, so that we're able to expand our product offering to a lot of these other places, just so that we know that if they do use their voice to authenticate, that we'll have such a good mechanism to be able to separate what is being generated and what is the modified voice, to be able to allow those products.
My follow-up question to that was, how does that help grow the business? What is the impact of investing in cybersecurity for us? How does that actually help growing the business?
Right, so I touched a little bit on this, I think there's two kind of buckets you could see. First is translating this to actual consumers, showing consumers what we're doing, so that they can, trust us with their money, because when they're moving a lot of money around, so that's a key growth vector of us having the users trust in the marketing campaigns. From the second one, we can now pursue acquisitions that other companies can. We can now pursue innovation that other companies can because of regulatory barriers that we've already figured out. And we do this across geographies as we grow regulatory. So it allows us more opportunities in our position.
Using more access to get to that.
Right, it's setting a base for doing the stuff that, hard hasn't built in the top of it.
Go on back, so it's great. What's stopping any of the other big banks from basically doing the same thing? It's kind of table stakes now, the same thing. And have good cybersecurity thing, and everyone's gonna assume that. So like, what are you doing to differentiate yourself from the other big banks?
Right, so I think the starting point for us was looking at where we currently are. We have cleaned up all of our technical debt, and we're actually acting right now immediately looking for new opportunities. We don't know what the state of other banks is, but traditionally they have a lot of technical debt, they have a lot of moving parts. It's not easy for them to do any of this. So the only reason we think this is feasible for our bank is because we have that position. And so given that, we can start building this out now that they can't, assuming, the state of it.
Question on hiring of data scientists, obviously the right move, but obviously a shortage of talent that exists in the marketplace. Again, similar to the question of differentiating the banks from a product perspective, how are you differentiating yourself from a culture perspective to get it to work for you versus working for the bank?
Yeah, of course. So the biggest draw, there's kind of two ways to look at it. The first way is that, and it kind of ties back to what Anton spoke about earlier, is kind of getting the marketing message out there that we are a bank that's at the forefront of technology. Right now, developers, speaking as a developer myself, it's very difficult for me to even consider working at a bank just because I feel like it's so bogged down again by that technological debt that they all seem to have acquired, right? So really making sure A, that the message gets out there, that everyone knows that we're at the forefront of newer technologies, and B, ensuring that we as a corporation are aligned, again, as we talk about being aligned with our strategy, making sure we're aligned to kind of tackle these newer, these kind of newer challenges and innovations by having that research division, by having dedicated data scientists that aren't really hindered by red tape. They've got that creative license, and getting that across to them is extremely important. What I think is going to drive talent coming in.
Awesome. The second question for me, we talk a lot about governance, obviously being in a bank. Are there any considerations from a governance perspective internally when it comes to moving from, say, more of a siloed database approach to now having a more distributed through a central backend, like data warehouse or HTTP plus instead cluster?
So to clarify your question, is it that there's going to be different kinds of accesses for different databases, and once we replicate them all into one?
Yeah, are there any changes on the process side that you feel that you consider as a result of again on back and changing and shifting in terms of how that are architected? Is that going to change for the frontline users in terms of the governance process that they have to access the data?
For the frontline, for the frontline users, we believe that all of these data warehouses that are replicated to this one central Hadoop distributed file system, that all the permissions that were previously granted or bestowed onto them for each different data cell would be the ones that they were able to access on the Hadoop store anyways. As long as that governance model was laid out pretty clearly before, and that as long as there's no nonsensical permissions granted for the same things, say like one person has different permissions for like the same data, then that's just going to need to be cleaned up a little bit before once it's centralized.
On that point, so I think it's about 1,500 systems, if I remember right. So you were saying that you're going to take the DBs and make one DB out of it, and it's going to cost $45,000. You're going to do it quick and something else on it. Do you think it's trivializing the issue of it, or maybe I didn't understand it correctly?
Yes, maybe not trivializing it, but a lot of the migrations to the Hadoop database are just getting a big upfront investment on it, or even say moving to the cloud for some things that might not be too confidential, even just starting off in the beginning, just for really a lot of tasks that require a lot of number crunching, even just for voice recognition, just having calls that might be recorded and having the Hadoop database only store stuff like that so that researchers could actually query it. We don't have to put every single record of everything on there all at once. There's only a few areas of our organization that we really want to double down on analyzing, and those are the ones that we'll be putting on it, which is why we think that that number is reasonable given those concerns.
Maybe just building off on the stack specifically, any concerns about running an open source platform today?
The Apache license, we think it's pretty secure. Hadoop is licensed under Apache, and we don't have to give up any of our source code once we use it. And a lot of other banks or other places are already using things like Hadoop, but open source for us still makes sense.
No, feedback.
You good? I want you guys to watch the video. I was very amused by the fact that at one point near the beginning in particular, you two sway in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So Anton was talking and the two of you were
Guys, really quick on feedback, mine's quick, I'm sure there's gonna be, excuse me guys, mine will be super quick. That was the more compelling in my presentation. I've watched this guy present for like 3 years, and that was way better. But no, really, like the presentation was very compelling. Griffin, really, really good at taking tech concepts and explaining in a very simplified manner. It's good because your judges will be mixed with like technical savvy people, and there's maybe someone like me who's less. So well done. One random element of content for you guys, especially in the talent side of things. You could have fleshed that out a little bit more. I think there's tons of examples of how can banks are doing a great job of hiring and innovative in that. Simple example of like RBC's Innovation Lab, I think is like one of the smartest. They don't actually target undergrads because they know they're gonna lose out to like the Googles and Facebooks. So they specifically target expats who are like from Canada who went out there to study and like want to come back for families. And then they specifically target brown people and help them get their visas. And they have, so like, just fact, fun fact and true. And then what they've actually done is like converted, like they have like a huge digital lab that's almost like separate from the rest of the company in terms of like, there's no dress code, you can sort of wear whatever you want, like it's very Google style in terms of benefits and that sort of thing. And it's in many ways like, so it's kind of like ostentatious. It's like the top floor of the bank, and it's like separate. And when you go, they're all cool, and everyone else in the suits as like an account manager.
Right.
So it's a little bit mean, but also like they tried to really separate out the culture in the hub because they needed like that, and use more like agile team style things. So look at RBC as sort of the best in class giving example, but mainly the targeting of expats as like a great way. So they're hiring out of Google's and Facebook's rather than trying to get undergrads or someone who's definitely not going to be compelled by working at a bank. And then they pay a shit ton more. They have to. So those are all parts of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, speaking from personal experience, like from my time at Microsoft, like there are months that you go 8-9 months without hiring a data scientist. So I think like actually getting a little more creative, flushed out on the hiring piece would have been very important. But yeah, similar feedback, like great job on the schematic. I think again, Anton would tell you from your past thing last year that I'm a big believer to in distilling down technical concepts with very visual and very articulate diagrams. So really good job on that. And overall, good presentation. I think from all three of you guys have nice chemistry, works really well together. The only piece I would maybe have in terms of feedback from a content perspective is it kind of goes to Ish's line of questioning is, again, as a bank, a lot of the case, a lot of your content focuses on purely operations, but I didn't necessarily see the connection as cleanly as I would like in terms of how it's pushing like forward in terms of monetizing, right? It's like, so we're getting all these great data insights, but like, what are we going to do to truly monetize that? How are we going to target our customers better, make sure they're getting better products, enhancing our customer experiences through things like voice, but again, creating more customer stickiness. There's a bunch of different things that you could have touched on there to really show how you're translating all that operational benefit into consumer value and ultimately money for you as a bank. So, but otherwise, really good job.
Yeah, kind of checking on that. And you know, Steve, a lot of the fintechs are very, very revenue oriented in the financial services industry. So if you want to think about that, a lot of the time we're talking innovation, not just cybersecurity. That's important, obviously, but that's not the service innovation is. Yeah, you did a great job content-wise. I think covered a lot of stuff we gave them feedback. The only thing I mentioned was the data and financial. Like I know we drilled on it a couple times. If you make a bold assumption, to be careful with it. Like consolidating information systems, like it's been going on for since the bank started. So you don't want to like trivialize it too much, or there's gonna be somebody in the room that has a product that's never managed to go live.
You cheese that.
Yeah, exactly, like, oh yeah, you can do it, sure. But, no, it was good otherwise. I don't really have any feedback, I think your structure is pretty good there. On the talent piece, well, I remember, every bank has had a hard time, I talked to the banks, has had a hard time making their staff. So, to String's point, I would call out that you should get senior people, and don't target junior staff as much, because it's kind of difficult for them to do it, there's no way to track them at Google and stuff like that. So, it's.
Yeah, throwing money at the problem is help, right? Like for undergrads and young people, so they're just being intelligent about getting expats, so they'll come back and live here.
I had one comment, it was just on the McKinsey part, I just thought maybe it'd be, better cater a little bit more to the case specifically, I think they did a good job of it, bringing it, maybe a little bit more tailoring it to what you've said already, and not just staying the framework. Would have been just a little better, but overall, it was great, you guys had great cadence, over to the Q&A as well. That was good, you were very concise and very to the point with your Q&A. I think that we had early on was a lot of our feedback, and you guys really did help with that. And then just one small little thing is just make sure you don't just say acronyms. So KYMC, ML, just say it. Like there might not be people who are tech savvy, just don't know that specific terms, and that just be good to kind of call it out, just so that's everyone's on the same page.
One particular thing that I really like is the signal from the noise.
Yeah, that was the best slide, that's
phenomenal.
Okay, that was
amazing, absolutely amazing. If you call out that there's a bunch of buzzwords that are being thrown up, and you make sure like you're, oh, this isn't relevant, people are just gonna come and say this nonsense. It adds a lot of credibility, a lot of credibility.
I think it's really flushed out the talent piece, because regardless of whether it's Scotia or any other company, it's gonna be an issue for anyone in the JDC sponsors 100%. Like whatever plan you're putting in, like pulling out the fact that you're not gonna have people is an obvious term that you guys can flush out. When you can't hire internally, what's your plan gonna be? Fourth, knowing before the competitions.
Studying banking in general, studying what tech is going to be, what tech issue might come up in banking. We know that Scotia's a sponsor again. They're gonna show up somewhere, right? More than one place.
I don't know if you guys could have any view of like what all the banks are, like where they are on the digital revolution. There's enough, you guys know enough about TV, you guys know enough about like RBC. I'd be curious, like if you guys did have a view of like where the like that's my one problem is it feels like everyone's gonna do that shit, right? So why is Scotia's different? I'll never wrap my head around it.
But they've done, if you find contacts, they actually are different. Like they're at different points.
Yeah, RBC is pretty far.
Exactly, we chat with people, and you get in more insight.
There you go, talk to Ashish.
Yeah, you need those insights. I really like the fact that you brought in the McKinsey piece to Dave's, to one, if somebody made a point, make it the only thing would be, describe what you just did, but if there's a moment that you can take within each box and say, so this is what it means you have to do. And I like that you threw those numbers out at the end, the stats at the end, like you just, I know what I'm talking about here, you can feel free to challenge me on it. The little black, I love the humor that's injected within this too. You kind of, with the black rock, I happen to have. Like it's just, humor is not something that I suspect is common within this tribe. So,
People are not funny at all.
Low people skills. Well done. I mean, to their point about the making it so that non-tech people can understand it, I'll be perfectly honest, I was still a little bit lost at the beginning, and I'm probably the outsider. I can't imagine that the digital strategy track would have someone like me on it. But despite that fact that you were able to keep me. What I think you've done well is I'm a good litmus test for did I manage to at least land the pieces I needed to land, in that even if I didn't always understand what you were talking about, I understood the implications of it at the end. So you always brought me back to, this is why it's important, this is what problem it solves, this is how it positions you. And that's, at the end of the day, somebody like me that's what they're listening for.
Yeah, maybe a slight pivot on like if this is the most technical concept and kind of scared most people thinking that entire spiel is probably Hadoop. Like a lot of people I don't know what Hadoop is. So maybe even like just explain what is a distributed file system, or like what is a data warehouse, or what are some of these things that consolidate the databases together. And then say, oh, here by the way, here's like 4 or 5 vendors that do it in the space, and here's the one we recommend based on X, Y, Z. It might just be a little bit of an easier way to ease people into it versus like just coming up with a name. And again, unless you follow that space, like you're gonna make to your point, people are gonna know that Hadoop is an Apache distribution, the same with Spark, there's a bunch of other ones, right? So.
Sorry, but I want to circle that point that Jason can go back to what Sophie said. I think it is very possible that you get like one judge individual strategy case who's there currently like a truly strategic perspective.
Yeah.
Wants to understand like how this all ties to strategy and is from a tech background. And that's always the angle I would take whenever I have to watch everyone's presentation, just like imagine I'm the CEO. Tell me how this is relevant to my company strategy and why it's worth the dollars, right? So didn't see much of a business case made, not saying it's one, but if I was the CEO, what I wanted was like, so how does this link to my strategy in terms of is it gonna kill me on the customer side, is it gonna kill me on the client side, something like that? There's a tangible outcome there. Here's the business case and here's the value created for my firm. I think a really good M&S team isn't always like 100% of their content technical. There's got to be that 10-15% that's strategic to tie it back. So I think that was a missing point in your structure.
I would say it was a minor point though, because like honestly, I did get, and maybe because you guys understood the stuff better, you might have been distracted by those other pieces.
That's what it is.
All of
After you
it.
brought it up that I forgot.
Yeah, no, because I can tell you that from my end, I was hearing blah, 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 here's why it's important. I'm like, all right, I'm good.
But it is actually such a nuance. But you're right, it is very nuanced, but it is an important call. Like to me, like I actually would have framed this presentation very relevant for like a CTO or a CIO. I don't necessarily know if this presentation I give for CEOs. So yeah, like there's different levels of the C-suite that you might want to be catering to, and I think you might want to make sure you're just kind of checking the box.
And I would argue that even to a CTO or CIO, like the CTO and CIO need a business case to talk to their CEO, right? You need a business case. They can't take that shit to CEO and be like, oh, what's the money? Like,
Do you mean in terms of tying it back to revenue and profits, or do you mean more so just?
no, it doesn't need to tie to revenue profits, but I do need to know whatever you're asking me to build, like, okay, I didn't know what the fuck Hadoop is, right? But tell me what the cost of that integration is gonna be. Like, if that's a $20 million investment versus a $200 million investment, I need to have a gauge of that. And if you tell me that that's absolutely critical then in terms of KPIs to like keeping my customer base down, being competitive, that's okay if you can't tie it all the way to revenue. But like some sense of cost and investment and size relative to like what it's creating, I think that's important.
I think I might have briefly mentioned it, nothing on the slides though, that say moving towards Hadoop or somewhere where you could query from one system and, well, first off, it's faster. And also then like each iteration to insight, like if you want to have an idea and then validate it, that if you're waiting 20 minutes for that query to run and you're waiting for your data to come in, then that's really going to slow down innovation. But maybe I should have put that on. the
No,
slide.
but, and there's a,
He's not saying that, I think, without getting into words. I think he's saying like, that's great, it's gonna make us faster, but so what? Like, that part of it, like, does that mean that you can find a customer more quickly? You can change something about your business more quickly? Like, what does that do for you to drive more revenue?
And maybe you could give like a concrete example in terms of what you could have done with the data more so.
or sure,
I agree with that.
just, we'll do this, let's just do this in 10 seconds right now. Pretend I'm the CEO right now. How much is this investment gonna cost me?
Is it perhaps you? $100,000?
$100,000? I don't believe that. No, like, I'm a huge ass fan. Like, if this was actually as meaningful as you said, and I would spend $100,000 on it, I can't believe that was a scam, right? So, I'm purposely being an asshole, but like, that was, it's probably a lot more than $100,000. Okay, so let's say it's $8 million. Okay, is that what it is?
That's the recurring cost.
Recurring cost $8 million a year, okay. So $8 million a year, tell me what are the qualitative KPIs that your company says, speed of innovation, vary, how many analysts are you gonna say in terms of marketing companies, right? Contextualize, you have this many people doing this much of a job, I just saved X amount of time off their job in a day. And you pay each of them 75 grand or 100 grand, that's a lot of money to invest on, right? And
Sorry, the baby fit topic.
Oh, okay, yeah, I probably should go resolve it here as well. But we can talk about it later, but I do think there's some merit to like converting into a very efficient business case. Sorry, I have to go this. When do we have to be back? When do we have to be back?
They're presenting at 4:20. They're done at 4:10.
Okay, so I should get on a topic in 5 minutes. Yeah. 25 minutes for the, where's 30? I'm just giving it 25.
Last year and final.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, the only thing I was disappointed is that you had to sign right your,
Yeah,
to do
it's
podcast.
good.
Yeah.
Never play your class. Oh, everything
So Ish, does Ishan actually mean great ones?
No, no.
Not even close.
I love
I wasn't sure, I was like, do I actually look this up?
No.
I was like, does Ishan actually stand for great one?
You're supposed to do this. Yo, tell me stories how you sat behind me on a bus ride from Mississauga all the way to Waterloo. He sat behind me, didn't say anything until I got off the bus. And he's like, hey, I was sitting behind you. And I was like, why didn't you say hi? He's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we should like take it from.
All time.
Any time? I can time.
Any time?
I'll time.
Okay.
Give me the.
It's a 2 minute, 1 minute, and a 10 second gap. You would apply that integrated.
I got a bad on integrated this time.
You did for number 2 or 3?
Number 3.
It's up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's up.
You did that.
I got A minus.
Oh shit! But you probably killed it for the first 2. So you're probably.
Yeah.
So now, I have the USB.
Can you hang on? Can you fast forward?
You good?
Climate change is one of the biggest issues our society faces today. There's a native saying that says, we do not inherit the world from our ancestors or elders, but instead we borrow it from our children. And at the rate we're living, there might not even be a world that they can inherit. Emily, your permaculture business strives and is a prime example of what our society needs to be doing in order to maintain a sustainable future. Through your positive reinforcement of positive waste collection, through your innovative compostable mechanism, we believe that your business is not only held incredibly valuable, it's not incredibly valuable only in European pricing, but also in across the world on a global scale and level. So today we're here to help you focus on some accounting issues that you've brought to us, so we can help ensure that you continue to maintain a successful business model that will help to improve the world in our future.
So my name is Sabah, this is Maddie, and this is Abu, and today we're going to look at the current issues that are being faced by the business. So after our analysis, we believe that there are key accounting issues that need to be fixed in order to have financial statements that are appropriately according to IFRS standards. Secondly, there's a very big opportunity for an R&D project, and the whole issue is, should this be taken or not? And looking at the actual cash flow projections and the quantitative analysis on that. Finally, the other issues that are being presented to VI is the audit considerations and how financing will be obtained for these upcoming projects with unaudited financial statements. So what we did is we took these issues and we categorized them into 3 buckets: adjusting, accelerating, and advising. And we believe by bucketing these 3 issues, we can create a solution that's going to help VI achieve its aspirations in the long run. So our recommendation is that we look into each accounting issue correlated to the standards and create adjustments in order to have sound financial statements in order to determine future projects. Secondly, we're going to advise on this R&D project. We believe it is a great opportunity for VI to invest in this new project relating to allergy prevention, as it results in an NPV of $478,000. Finally, we believe that VI should look into getting audited on an annual basis to ensure compliance with accounting standards and to make sure that if financing is required to be obtained, it can happen. I will now hand it over to Abu.
Thanks. So before we jump into the good stuff of how we're gonna manage our strategy with that, it's important for us to adjust all of our accounting procedures and policies to make sure that we're in compliance with the standards. So I'm gonna drive there a little bit with these. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna follow the IFRS standards because that's what's required by the Paris subsidiary that we're looking to partner with. So we're gonna correct all those policies and procedures. And finally, we're gonna give you the sound financial representation of what your company actually looks like. So jumping right into it, our first issue that we're presented with is marketable securities. So here you have investments in condos and other companies or other shares within Canada, and you've recorded them at cost so far. So there's kind of 2 layers to this issue. The first one that we saw was the investment in the condo, which is in Florida. We believe that this goes against the business entity theory of the CPA handbook, which states that the business and the owner should be separated. So here you kind of told us that this is something that you want to keep in the future when you retire. So we want to de-recognize this off our books. And the second layer of this issue is the investments in the company. So since we are in compliance with IFRS, they require us to use the equity method in accordance with IFRS 9. So here management can choose whether they want to record these through OCI or other comprehensive income or through profit and loss. So our conclusion here is that we want to de-recognize the asset of $6 million within the condos off our books and revalue our investments to fair value. And what the impact of this is in terms of numbers is an increase in assets of $21 billion and an increase in net income of the same amount. The second issue is the non-monetary exchange of assets. So here you've exchanged your land for 3 years supply worth of worm production, just of that sort, and you recorded a loss on the land that you've given up. The IFRS standards actually state that this is not a loss because there's no commercial substance in this transaction because no cash was changed on hand. Therefore, there could be no gain or loss recorded on the sale. So as we do not have the information on how much the value of the 3-year supply was, we recommend as of now to reverse the loss on land, and that will give us the impact of increasing retained earnings of $851K with the same in the net income. The next issue is with fixed assets. So here you've given us all of your fixed assets that you have so far and how you've depreciated them. But we believe that there's actually an issue with these because they're currently being recorded at cost. And if you look at the IFRS standards, which is IAS 16, talks about property, plant, and equipment, they actually require to use the fair value method, not the cost method, which can be used under ASPE. So here, the fair value method actually requires you to revalue your assets annually and change them and record a gain or loss on your income statement. So after we've gone through all of your numbers, we actually came up with an increase in fixed assets of $3.6 million and the same number, an increase in net income. The next issue is about revenue recognition. So you told us you recognize revenue currently on shipments, and we actually believe this meets the criteria of IAS 18, which talks about revenue, which is whether your risks and rewards have been transferred, no more managerial involvement or control over the ownership of the assets. The revenue is measurable, collectible, and costs can be measured as well. So although 40% of your current revenue is related to annual contracts, we believe that this should not be recorded anyway because you still have the control over the assets and you haven't transferred the risks over to the customer yet. So there actually is no financial impact of this issue. Now I'll pass it on to Maddie to finish up the accounting issues.
Okay, so the next issue we had was regarding the patent. So currently, the patent for the worm process is currently owned by the owner as a personal patent. is currently owned by Emily. We believe that this is not a very good way for the business to be reporting their patent, as the owner, for example, Emily could just go off and sell the patent herself, leaving the business with nothing, and her with a bonus of however much the patent cost they sold for. Actually, looking deeper into this issue, we realized that any internally developed asset made by an employee under the company would actually automatically belong to the company. So for this issue, we believe that the Vernon Culture should record this as an asset on their books under IAS 38. It would be an intangible asset, and it meets currently as meets all required. So it would actually be an increase in assets of 50 million. And yeah, essentially the Vernon Culture should own this patent, and it should not be the business owners. Okay, so the next one is the issue regarding the direct worm production cost. So currently, your vermiculture is reporting the cost as a total percent and not actually comparing it to the revenue. So this actually violates the conceptual framework, which is the matching principle. So the matching principle states that your expenses should be recognized and matched with your revenue. So we believe that vermiculture should shift their accounting policy and to follow and be in compliance with IFRS. And they should also, another issue with the direct worm production costs was the fact that right now they had to dispose of a large amount due to the research not working out for them. So based on this, because they had insurance, they're able to claim 25% of the cost that they lost. So they should set up an account receivable or some type of receivable to ensure that the insurance claim is recorded. So the overall impact is an increase in assets of 2.275 million, and there's also increased retained earnings. And the last issue is whether or not to capitalize or expense the worm breeding huts. So currently you're expensing the huts. We believe this is incorrect, as the worm breeding huts are actually an asset. They do meet the criteria of IAS 38 for the development costs, because they provide, this is an asset or capitalization, asset or capitalization or expense. We believe they should be capitalized because they do meet the requirements of an asset. So the next one is actually capitalizing and research and development costs. So we believe that the research and development costs for this worm, for the worm costs, they do meet the requirements under IAS 38. You can see up here, they're technologically feasible. There's an economic benefit from the worms, and they have the ability to sell them. There's a viable market. The cost can be measured, and there's adequate resources to produce this worm. So they should recognize the R&D cost, which will impact assets at 2.3 million, and also increase revenue, increase net income, because it will be taken off as an expense. And the capitalizations should also be amortized over the useful life of the projects.
So just to give you a summary of what we've talked about with all these accounting issues, is that after correcting your accounting issues, just to give you a sense of how much impact incentive actually had on your statements. The net income actually increases by 35 million as to currently what you have. So with these, we can give the Paris subsidiary the new financial statements that they're actually looking for when we're partnering with them. One of the key risks that we acknowledged was that VI doesn't really have any expertise within their accounting department, because they only have one accountant who is not actually a certified accountant. So we believe that to mitigate this, they should hire external auditors on an annual basis to get their financial statements audited, and as well hire more accountants to manage the ongoing and daily transactions that the business has.
All right, so now let's jump into what we do in the future. So we fixed our accounting issues. We're in a good place to make investments in the future, and now we can get down to the fun stuff. So right now, there's an unclear strategy in terms of the research and development and how we're going to take it forward to leave a long-lasting impact in the world, as Maddie mentioned, is one of the aspirations of VI. So we believe by creating a research and development facility for allergy prevention testing, we can get positive net present values leading to future profits and economic benefit. So just looking at the qualitative aspect of this project, we assessed the benefits and the risks of this project. And we noted that right now there's an untapped market when it comes to allergy treatment and prevention, using worms and parasites as a basis for testing. So current studies are showing that there's a lot of potential, and there's not really anyone who's capitalizing on this. So that is a really big benefit that's available to VI to get into and really reap the benefits from that. But with all benefits, there will also be some risks. So a couple of the key risks that we identified with this project is the risk of the legal implications of using worms and parasites for medical testing, as well as what happens if the treatment doesn't actually give us the desired results that we're looking for. So in order to mitigate these risks, we believe that getting expert advice and actually developing the products will really mitigate that risk of having any legal implications with using the viruses and parasites for the testing. And if the treatment doesn't actually give us the desired results, we believe that this investment wouldn't actually be a waste. Just because we can transform this research lab and use it as an innovation center for our employees to come in and find new ideas and new innovations to really change the world and create these innovative solutions, not only in the medical industry, but also various other key issues that are impacting our world. And we believe that this research lab would really help VI get that future benefit. So now let's look at the quantitative analysis. So we understand that you wanted cash flow projections for this project. So we've based our projections over a 7-year period. Based on the revenues that you gave us, we understand that the sales are going to be fluctuating based on the results of the treatment. So what we did was, in order to accommodate for that, we did a sensitivity looking at the average sales as well as the maximum sales and the minimum sales that could be acquired by VI. So looking at the average sales, we look and see that based on the production levels, the costs actually do change. So we have a little bit of an increase in 2012, but then we entered into a sustainable positive cash flow after 2014 going onwards. And we understand that the sales are going to be something that is sustainable over the next few years rather than declining. And given the industry and where it's headed, we believe that is a reasonable assessment. In terms of our sensitivity, we looked at the minimum sales as well. So as you can see, the start is kind of rocky in terms of the cash flows, but we do also enter into a positive cash flow in the later years and creating that sustainable stream of revenue, even at the minimum level of sales. And as you can tell, with maximum, we have the same kind of pattern where we really do enter into a positive cash flow. So looking at the cash flows at all points in time and levels of sales, we see that at the end result, we are developing a positive cash flow for VI, which is something that indicates that this is a great project to go into. Looking at the net present value, we can see that based on the average sales, we do have a positive NPV. And for the basis of our calculation, we use a discount rate of 10%. The borrowing rate currently for VI is around 4%. But given the riskiness of this project, we believe using a 10% discount rate would be appropriate. And again, that leads into a positive NPV, reiterating the fact that this is a great project to go into. So just to summarize, we really do believe that this investment in the allergy prevention project is a great idea for VI to get into. And again, as mentioned before, the key risk is if the desired results aren't achieved in terms of the treatment testing, we can turn this into an innovation center for employees and find cool and unique ways to create advances in innovation to help lead a lasting impact on the world.
Okay, so now that we have our accounting issues all sorted out, we have our direction of where we want to go, which is through the new allergy and Norton development. We're now going to kind of discuss some other issues that you brought to us. So first of all, you want to know more information about a potential audit that might be happening in the future. We actually have another recommendation for you, an additional recommendation of the board of directors implementation. And we believe that based on knowing more about the audit and implementing this board of directors, you'll be able to continue your success. So some benefits of a financial audit. So having your audited statements, so having someone, a third party, come out and make sure and verify your statements are financially correct and are free of misstatements will help you have more accurate financial information. This can also lead to better decision making because you'll be able to tell where your net income really falls rather than relying on your current account, which currently has no accounting experience. And you'll also be able to obtain financing for larger projects as many banks and other lenders usually require audited statements. So for some audit risks that we have identified for vermiculture is the fact that the preparer or your current account has no actual accounting designation. Now this can lead to a lot of accounting issues that are unresolved and which leads to more misstatements. There's currently no board of directors oversight. So right now, many of you are currently not being, advised or being helped out by another party. So without the board of directors oversight, you're essentially like free will to do anything you would like, which poses a high audit risk. There's also your accounting transactions are very complex, And this is also your first time being audited, which would also increase your audit risk. Now, some low risk items, so some things are in your favor going into this audit, as we currently have not identified any control weaknesses. We believe that your controls are supposedly working and properly in place. And we've already been audited by the CRA for tax purposes. So based on the audit risk, the auditors will then calculate their materiality. So overall materiality is essentially taking 3 to 7% of your net income and basing that percentage off of how large a misstatement can be that is allowed on your financial statements. And performance materiality is 65 to 80% of your overall materiality, which essentially tells the auditors which transactions and which accounts they need to be testing and to be doing more investigating, more investigation. So your key takeaway, so we've assumed a lower threshold for based on your audit risk. So we've assumed an overall materiality of approximately $122,000 and performance materiality of approximately $85,000.
All right, so the auditors are going to be taking an audit approach that is going to be combined with controls testing as well as substandard testing. So what the auditors are going to do first is they're going to come in and they're going to talk to you about the controls that are in place at your firm and determine if reliance can be obtained over these controls. Now this will be the deciding factor on where the audit approach is going to flow from there. If they decide that they have reliance on your controls, then they would do a combined approach, mixing control testing with a substantive approach. If they determine that the controls aren't operating effectively at your firm, they're going to take more of a substantive approach when it comes to testing the actual transactions that have happened at your organization. So based on, I guess, the initial assessment by the auditors, they will create an approach that will fall in line with more or less what we have explained. And we determined that there are some specific transactions that happen for VI that are not common for all businesses. So we noticed that there are multiple government grants in place. So what the auditors are going to come and do, they're going to verify that the terms and conditions are met for every government grant in place. And our initial review of these terms and conditions indicates that VI's conditions are currently being met and we don't see any risk of them being defaulted on.
So one of the things that you didn't really tell us or explicitly is that you have all the ownership of the business and you kind of have all this power. And with power comes a lot more responsibility. And we believe that it's better for you to actually share this responsibility with the board of directors. So implementing a board of directors will help you do a lot of things. And one of them is implementing a strategy. So board of directors have a lot of expertise in the industry. And with that, they add new industry perspectives to help you in the future of your business. With more knowledge of threats and opportunities, you can better prepare yourself and your business to overcome these challenges and these obstacles. And finally, you can decrease your audit risk because with board of directors and audit committee, you can have financial statements annually, and therefore your audit risk will be actually lower.
All right, so to summarize, we really believe that an audit is the best approach for VI, and the risk is if you don't have a good audit opinion from the auditors, you can seek external financing that doesn't require audited financial statements. And based on our assessment of the ratios, we believe that this is a possibility for VI.
Now, just to reiterate what we've gone over, so we've kind of hit on 3 different sections. The first one was adjusting. So we've corrected all of your accounting policies and procedures. And what we've come out of that is a 35 million increase in your net income. Secondly, we've advised you in investing in the R&D project would actually lead you to a positive net present value. And finally, we've recommended you that you get annual audited statements and also change your corporate governance structure with the addition of a board of directors. So what we come out of this is that we have a business model that is sustainable for the long run. And with that in mind, I'd like to open the floor to any questions that you may have.
Okay, thanks guys. So I guess my first question is like in the current year and the previous year, we had a loss. We're gonna make a lot of adjustments and it's gonna put us in a good position for the current year, but how does it look like moving forward? Are we gonna be earning money on an operating basis and some insight on that?
Yeah, so actually after changing all those, fixing all the accounting errors, we actually had an operational, not a loss, but an actual income because a lot of those expenses related to something that could have been capitalized. So taking them out, we actually had an operating income, and looking forward with the investment of the R&D project, as we have shown you the cash flows, we will be operating on an operating income basis.
Maybe kind of an extension on that, we experienced in 2008 and like the $1 million loss, that read out a bunch of them trying to be off from the supplier. Is there strategies or steps that we're taking to be able to prevent that happening in the future?
Yeah, so we believe that by having this new facility for R&D and having that expertise in order to develop products, we believe that we can mitigate that risk of having these instances where we're having to write off inventory, just because we're getting that initial, taking those few steps in the beginning to make sure the products that we're delivering are correct and the products that we're getting are correct as well. So we do believe by making those adjustments in terms of our operations, that risk of writing off all of these assets can be decreased, and then we can actually have the sustainable revenues that the company should have been having without those little bumps along the way.
So I actually have a few questions regarding the partnership that you're recommending. So just qualitatively, what would you say are kind of the implications of partnering with a company like La Company?
Yeah, so a lot of what went into our advice of partnering with this was that this company is a pharmaceutical giant based out of Paris. So what we can get out of that is actually just that Owen's question just asked about how we can mitigate or some of these risks in terms of operations. We can actually leverage their resources in terms of their expertise within the industry because they are such a giant. So we can leverage their resources to decrease and mitigate all of these risks in terms of that. And then quantitatively, as we've shown you, there's actually a positive net present value for this project.
Okay, and just in case, have you guys considered any other, alternatives for financing besides forming a partnership or anything like that?
I was gonna say, because we're not compliant with IFRS, an option that would have to be very carefully considered, specifically for like your management preferences only, would be to potentially go public. Because we believe that this company holds so much value to society across the world with their implementation of their positive and sustainable waste management. We believe that going public would bring a lot of public interest and would actually provide us with a lot more support financially to continue to provide the services and innovate new project ideas.
In regards to the non-monetary transaction, if we were to say that there was some commercial substance there, and we were able to kind of quantify the value of the item that we received, can you walk me through like what the accounting would then look like as a result?
Yeah, so if it was determined that it was commercial substance, and you actually, depending on what the land was valued at and what the supply that you got was valued at, you would recognize that as a gain or loss within your retained earnings.
In regards to the government grant, and we had a lot of issues that we were talking about. Did we get a chance to analyze that specifically, or did I just cross it through?
Yeah, so the government grant was analyzed within the audit issue. So the auditors will actually come in and do like a verification of the requirements, the full requirements regarding the employment grant. So they're going to do all these procedures to test whether you're meeting them, and after that, they're actually going to issue you a report to see if you're on track to meet that. But in terms of the accounting side of that, the only implication that we saw would have is that 2 of the employees that are affected by this grant are currently seeking employment elsewhere, which would actually negate the conditions that are imposed by the government. So this would be recorded as a provision. If it is considered, but so far that since we are not given enough information on the probability of this, you can disclose this in your financial statements.
Any questions here?
One question. Since we don't really know enough about the company for a 10% discount rate, what would the IRR be? Is there a break even here for that project?
So in terms of the project, we don't really have an understanding of where the cutoff would be to actually get that $0 return. However, based on the probabilities that were given to us, we took the average, which is very much leaning towards a lower performance from the product in place. And we're getting a very positive return already. So we believe based on that it would be an appropriate assessment for the project.
Good. So I think with this case, what I noticed most is that there was so much to assess, right? And what people normally do when it comes to all those animations, especially, is they don't even go as in depth. It's kind of like that, right? You're like, it's stress to do. Because what we're going to do when we work position, right, is we're going to do a couple of animations, right?
Can we keep it down back there? Folks, you can whisper amongst yourselves, but they can't hear their feedback over here.
My parents go. Oh, to visit? That's all. It's sweet. Mostly to give me food. Meal prep. They answered my question. Do you think she'll skip with your accent? Oh, no. I don't be telling her. Huh? I don't be telling her. I never keep asking you for time to do this. I want like a study time. I want like a relationship. You don't want that? No. That's what you need. Then why do you feel if it's time to do it? I know, but it'd be nice. It doesn't have to be time, as long as you grow. For relationship? Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be so nice.
I'm having trouble seeing the MIS video.
That's because I've just been like straight up doing one whole stream.
Sorry?
I've been doing one whole stream for like since finance.
Oh.
So it hasn't. I can end the stream right now, and then I think you'll be able to see it. Let it go.
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Do you want me to do one for debate too?
Yeah, do
Okay.